This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto was raised by a goddess. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Karma. It is a strong, nearly unstoppable force that can withstand time itself, topple mountains, and turn oceans aside. The force of attraction is balance. You receive good karma when you resist, stay away from, and stop evil. You get the opposite if you resist. If you cause something, you receive your karma back. The individual in question is granted one wish from heaven or hell, as appropriate, on the rare occasions when something of nearly equal power, like a star of misfortune or blind emotions, blocks the karma. One man, who did not believe his wish, said that he wished for the goddess delivering it to stay with him forever, gaining immortality and the love of his life. On all but one occasion, it was for the karma to be unblocked and they lived their normal lives. Another is now deserving of a single wish for the first time in many thousand years. The one who got it, a little 5-year-old boy living alone, dreaded, hated, and suffering spiritually. But what could a child like that hope for? The consequences of manipulating time and reality to suit one's own desires are beyond their comprehension. He has no way of knowing that what he is about to say has the power to either save or destroy the world. The ability to do anything, once and only once, to win his love or take his life. Is anyone deserving of this? Let's see. There was a young boy in his apartment by himself, wearing blue shorts and a filthy white t-shirt. In the midst of the dust and the darkness, Naruto pushed his bangs out of his eyes. Although everything was covered in dust, it appeared as though a wild party had just taken place the previous evening. Go back to hell, monster. Burn and die. And go back to where you belong and rot, were among the hateful phrases written on the walls. He was terribly malnourished and holding a screwdriver. In addition to being small for his pitiful age of 5, the blue-eyed blonde was also impoverished and dirty. Naruto was fiddling with a malfunctioning television. He had discovered it in the trash. He was attempting to figure out how to get this broken one to watch shows on this like the others he had seen. He simply didn't know how to plug it in, so it wasn't broken all that much. He never received any instruction. Instead, he learned everything by listening to and observing others. With a sigh, he took a seat in front of the dark screen. He flopped onto his back and muttered, "I guess it is just a piece of junk. Aw man, I wanted to watch the pictures like those other kids do." The woman's voice was friendly and playful in a soothing way, saying, "Hey, what are you calling a piece of junk? Just plug it in, it'll work fine." Naruto asked, "Do what now?" And it gave a soft laugh, but he sensed that she wasn't making fun of him. The voice sounded happy as though she enjoyed being with him. "Oh, of course, no one ever told you. Take that bit with 2 metal bits sticking out and put the metal bits into the holes in the wall surrounded by plastic, but don't force it," she said. Naruto plugged the old TV in, blinking but wary of anything going wrong, and it came alive. When he hurried to the front of it, he saw a dark-skinned woman with white hair, 2 tiny blue triangles with their points pointing inwards high on her cheeks, and a red 6-pointed star dead center on her forehead. She exclaimed, "Yo cutie," and began to get up from the television screen to the now frightened Naruto, who was utterly out of his element and pressed against the wall. Who was introducing herself to him, said, "Don't be afraid, kiddo. I may be the daughter of the Queen of Hell, but I also have the Lord of Heaven for a father. My name is I am a goddess second-class limited." She was giggling a little at his blushing light from her provocative purple gown, which looked dignified and elegant but revealed nothing at all. She chuckled softly when he realized she had heard Naruto utter the word, "Be beautiful." Naruto stood up straight in embarrassment and bowed, saying, "Sorry, I'm Naruto." Who had purposefully been kept in the dark about the specifics of her current assignment, asked, "So where are your parents, Squirt? Something big is about to happen to you and they should help you through it." Hurried to Naruto's side to console him as he sobbed, I don't have any." The matron said, "Monsters do. Don't deserve any. What on earth? All of this was not disclosed to me. What the fuck is that? He's keeping a rogue demon at bay by my father. And getting punished severely for it. What should I do?" she thought, and Naruto sniffed as he cautiously returned the hug. He spoke so softly that who was so close, could hardly hear him, even with her enhanced senses. "I wish she was my mommy." Both of them exuded a tremendous glow, and sensed a fundamental shift in the child in her arms. The rogue demon was transformed into a demon part and his humanity was transformed into a third as divine essence was poured into him. Third human, third demon, or third god. What happened? Naruto exclaimed, stepping back from her and gazing at his new attire. "Wow, that's some sort of hybrid." He had on a dark reddish-brown vest, 2 black bracers on each arm, and a dark blue hakama with red-strapped gata. Naruto nodded in response to Erd's question, "Calm down, kiddo. As I already told you, I'm a goddess, right?" Naruto looked at her for a moment before tackling her into an embrace. "Well, you started crying before I could tell you that I was sent to grant you a wish. And I heard you mutter that you wished I was your mother. So now I am, son," she said nervously. "He's a cute little wonder, so this might be entertaining. Additionally, his markings are really adorable," she thought, briefly recalling what she had seen. 6 of Naruto's 9 markings were sloping lines, and the other 3 made her think of her sister. There were 3 markings on each cheek and 3 on the forehead. A red one with a green one above it and a blue line below on each cheek. On his forehead, the blue was 2 from the left, followed by the red and green. Think Kyuubi had Naruto for the shape. Then, 3 long Beldandi style marks on the forehead. They simply remained there while Naruto washed away his suffering and fears, and Erd used her empathy skills to learn more about her new son. After a while, they heard someone knock on the door. With a sigh, Erd got up and carried Naruto with her. She opened the apartment door and scowled at the young chunin, who had silver hair and a toque covering his forehead. Mizuki eyed Erd up and down and expressed her admiration for her sense of style when she said, "The Honorable Council calls you Erd Norn to their meeting chambers to discuss your adoption of the little freak." As Naruto stuck his tongue out at Mizuki, Erd grinned and said, "Whatever. Lead the way, kid." When they left the apartment building, he took the lead and leapt off with force, only to be surprised to find Erd following him the entire time. She entered the council room with Naruto on his piggyback, who was observing with curiosity and attracting a lot of strange glances due to the marks on his face. A fat man started, "Ms. Norn. You are here to answer questions as to why." He had a few gray hairs and was going bald, and his face was always contemptuous. Erd asked, her violet eyes staring intently at the man, "Is anything out of place in the papers?" Erd raised an eyebrow in response to the man's statement that it isn't that much because the paperwork shouldn't exist in the first place. "All right, let me clarify. You have a problem with the fact that my adoption of him was completely lawful and that all the paperwork was completed correctly?" Erd put the man on the spot and asked. "Yes, because no one can recall ever giving you the papers to fill out in question," the man replied with a smile. "How did you find out about that? A thorough investigation would not have been feasible if the documents had only recently been found." Sarutobi, who had been grinning subtly, smiled even more when Erd retorted, "And if a legal form is properly filled out and filed, then unless it is outright ridiculed or contradicted by either local law or another document, it is perfectly legal." Everybody knew that this spunky but viciously smart woman had all the bases covered, but Councilman Gyasho was unyielding. "It is not entitled to family," Gyasho yelled out, and Erd responded with a lightning bolt. As the man fell in a quivering mass, Erd said, "Don't insult him, he's family now, and above all else family is precious to me. I didn't kill him, but he won't be able to move for a while." According to their accounts, such a powerful Raiden affinity was unheard of. While the civilians were mostly terrified, Sarutobi and the heads of the shinobi clan were intrigued. And Danzo was furious that the Kyuubi brat now had such a strong protector. Naruto was smiling cheekily at them, realizing how good things were getting. Cherry Haruno, who had nothing against Naruto because she had lost nothing in the Kyuubi attack, cleared her throat in an attempt to restart the conversation, but she was quickly carried away by the intense animosity toward the child. "Lord Sarutobi, I think this was one of the preset circumstances towards certain information regarding Naruto's release, isn't it?" Reluctantly, the Hokage nodded in response to her question. "Erd Naruto. You are both now in a position to know what I am about to share, even though it is sensitive information." Naruto. Many people have a hostile view of you because you are the living prison of Kyuubi no Kitsune. Since you are the 4th Hokage's only child, you will also inherit the clan's wealth and estate. When Sarutobi clarified, Naruto suddenly appeared terrified. The 2 other circumstances for this to occur were when you reached 18 years of age or the rank of chunin. Don't be concerned about his rogue demon. His face's red markings stand for the creature's power, the blue for the god's power, and the green for nature's power. In order to kill the Kyuubi inside his seal, I added to it. Erd lied like a master, saying, and they doubted that being a goddess capable of lying would be useful. Naruto stared at her in awe, but he quickly realized the lie. By tomorrow it will be dead and all that will be left of it will be those 9 marks. What the cunning little guy, he's on to me and playing along like a pro. It's going to be fun hanging out with him. Erd thought, smiling at the closeness. "Thanks, Mom," he said, nuzzling her neck a little to go along with the act. Shikiku Nara's voice reverberated in the amazing silence as he said, "Well, That is unexpected, but I've never heard of any clan so proficient with the sealing arts, or anyone possessing so powerful a lightning affinity. Mind explaining how such abilities could remain secret for so long? My family doesn't talk much, but I'm here because the little kid needs me. Naruto gave her a hopeful look as Erd clarified. We also migrate whenever someone new is brought into the fold and only stay in small groups. Does that imply that my aunts and uncles will be visiting us? Erd laughed when Naruto asked. Yes, they will probably begin to appear in a few days. I gave my younger sister the same amount of time after she moved in with her boyfriend. There were some giggles as Erd clarified. Well, they're married now and have a child, but that's not the point. People started leaving the room and chatting among themselves after Sarutobi said, well, now that all relevant information is on the table, I'd like to adjourn this meeting and speak to you and Naruto in private, Miss Norn. Erd shrugged and started to follow the elderly man, and he laughed when he was sure they were by themselves. I have to admit, Naruto, that learning that you were adopted by the oldest of the 3 Norn sisters gave me the shock of my life. The self-proclaimed goddess of romance and love and the goddess of the past Erd. As he filled his pipe, Sarutobi asked, his eyes sparkling. How did you find out about that? Erd asked in shock. When they entered his office, Sarutobi lit his pipe with a spark of chakra and gave Erd a sidelong glance before saying, they don't call me Professor Sandame for nothing. Naruto and Erd sat down as Sarutobi locked the door and used a privacy jutsu. What I would like to know is just how in hell did you manage to get the daughter of both the devil and Kami Sama to adopt you? Slumping into his chair, Sarutobi remarked, I know you can pull off some impressive feats when under pressure, but this takes the tobacco. Erd said, well, as you know, old man. Sarutobi snorted at that, saying, I work mostly directly for my father and am just friendly with my mother. I was given a somewhat perplexing assignment that essentially involved granting a 5-year-old one wish. I would like to know why you let a little kid get into such a position. Erd explained, giving him a slight glare. He wished for a mother. Are you not the leader of this village? She insisted, and Sarutobi wriggled slightly. I can only guide them if they will follow me, and few did so in the case of Naruto. Even though I'm the strongest shinobi here, I'm old. I should have retired decades ago to spend more time with my family, but my successor passed away and no one else was qualified to take over. Additionally, the civilian half of the council drafted numerous laws and regulations that were legally binding during the turmoil surrounding the death of my successor, depriving me of a large portion of my authority, sighed Sarutobi. Well, putting avaricious mortals aside, I'd like to see where he and I will be living. Would you mind giving me the keys and perhaps some instructions? Erd inquired, and Sarutobi reached into his desk and took out a heavy-looking key ring. Sarutobi got up from the chair and led them out of the office, saying, I'll take any excuse to get away from the paperwork, so I'll walk you there myself and show you the more important places around the village. Erd remarked, sounds good, lead the way, old man. Sarutobi said, says the woman thousands of years my senior. He was given a slight head bump, which caused his hat to fall off. A few hours later, after the tour ended, Erd remarked, Hun, this place is almost exactly like the old temple my sister lived in with her boyfriend. Erd gave a quiet laugh when Sarutobi remarked, I didn't figure this place was that old. Anyway, Gramps, there must be at least 2 piles of paperwork that are touching the ceiling. After Erd said, that and I need to start tutoring the brat on how to use his powers, a huge burst of energy erupted outside the tiny mansion. Oh crap, Mom, Erd said, and she hurried outside, followed closely by a nearly terrified Hokage and her recently adopted son. They saw a twister of purple electricity pulsing and releasing bursts of massive energy, frightening the living daylights out of anyone within 10 miles of the area who could sense chakra, making their hair stand on end as a profound sense of dread descended upon Konoha. Then, out of it, stepped a deeply tanned woman with snow-white hair wearing a red gown that was even more elegant than Erd's, complete with large bracelets and anklets, numerous ear piercings, and an elaborate headpiece. Erd-chan. Hilde squealed like a schoolgirl giving her daughter the mother of all hugs. Pun not intended. Is it true? Was I truly made a grandmother by you? She asked, giddy with excitement. Yes, he's the blonde right behind me, Erd said, a little taken aback by how fast she had figured it out. Oh, you're adorable, Hilde squealed and gathered Naruto in an embrace as epic as the one she gave Erd. Demon. Why are you in our village, a monster like you? A heavily bandaged, one-armed man demanded, glaring at Hilde with his only eye. What's it like to visit my daughter and my recently adopted grandson? Now shoo, little human, I don't have time to waste on a one-armed worm with an overblown sense of entitlement. Hilde replied cheekily, completely unfazed by the rapidly expanding ninja force behind the man, all of them preparing weapons. Hilde then turned back to Naruto and said, "Oh, these whisker marks are so adorable, I'm sure you'll be a hit with the girls." Everyone except Danzo and Root either laughed or perspired when she gushed. "Get rid of that nasty witch." Hilde turned smirking and laughed delicately as the entire force was about to strike at once, but she snapped her fingers, and black hellfire rose up around each one, burning them to ash before they could even scream. Danzo yelled, but the Root members ignored Sarutobi's order to stop. "Geez, Mom, wasn't that a bit too much?" Hilde shrugged when Erd asked. "The best mess dies like everyone else." Hilde shrugged, and many people were staring at her in disbelief. Or something like that. I don't keep up with the trendy sayings of the day. Hem. Lady Hilde, while you swoon over Naruto, we could talk inside. Maybe we could make some arrangements. Well, that's going to give me a mountain's worth of paperwork to deal with now, O Queen of Hell, Sarutobi said, leading the way into the mansion and ordering the remaining Anbu to keep everyone out. Wouldn't it have been possible to hypnotize them? Hilde laughed as she ran her fingers through Naruto's hair, which she had quickly grown fond of because it felt soft and silky, in response to Sarutobi's question. Erd looked from her mother to Sarutobi with wide eyes as Hilde said, "Sorry, Saru-chan. I held back as much as I could, but I'm one of the most powerful beings in existence, you know." The old man blushed and covered his head with his hat. "According to her, you didn't." With a giggle, Hilde said, "Oh yes we did." "No, we didn't. As tempting as that may be, I am just your mother's acquaintance," Sarutobi objected, narrowing his eyes. "We're much more than just acquaintances, in my opinion." Hilde blushed a little herself and said, "Especially since we just need memories to know all about each other, hanging like an ape Hiruzen." Naruto simply blinked and chose to remain silent, aware that everything hovered a mile above his head and that if his new mother, for all her playfulness, was sputtering and shocked, he didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. Lovers are not made Hilde by a single poker game. Hilde's eye glowed as Sarutobi snapped. "Well, it helps if it's strip poker, and 30 years ago, you were quite impressive." Sarutobi bled a little in remembrance as Hilde teased, "But I must admit you took my gown rather quickly in that game." Erd remarked, "Oh, I need some sake." Then he saw that Sarutobi had taken a flask from his hat and swigged of the visibly strong concoction. "Please?" Erd threw the flask back after she said, "Damn, that's some tough stuff." She took a gulp and exhaled a flash of fire while screaming in agony. Before taking another swig to calm himself, Sarutobi said, "My own personal brew. Anyway, Hilde, I know how much you value family, so we have to find a less dangerous method for you to enter and exit Konoha. Maybe a gateway made of fuinjutsu and demon magic." Sarutobi proposed, "One that will allow you to enter as if you were passing through a doorway, so nobody will bother you or me about your presence here." "All right, hanging like an ape, I'll take care of the rest if you can quickly create a few seals." "I'd hate to bother such an old crusty man," she said and got one hell of a glare from him which she giggled under and waved off. Finally, after boring holes in the walls behind Hilde, he took out a couple pieces of paper, a brush and some ink and quickly made a couple seals. "Oh." Someone had a sneaking suspicion. "Even with the light, you are still the shrewd monkey you were, flexible, agile, and attractive." "Mom, enough that I believe he understands. Additionally, would you kindly refrain from permanently scarring Naruto? It's about 8, so I'll put Naruto to bed, then we can argue about risque copyright topics." Erd practically screamed, which made Hilde start laughing uncontrollably and let Naruto finally break free from her embrace. "Look, it's about 8, so I'll put Naruto to bed, then we can argue about risque copyright topics." Erd used a sleep spell on Naruto, and he was out immediately. His eyes snapped open to the sound of birdsong and a ray of sunlight striking him in the face, and he moaned and turned on his bed, burying his face in the fluffy pillow and tossing the blankets over his head before stopping and thinking, "What happened? I feel weird. Wait, that lady. No, my new mommy. I have a mommy. I have a mommy." His expression went from thoughtful to worried to a slow but sincere and beaming smile. Then he heard a sizzling sound, and he ran off at a furious pace, avoiding half-open doors and slipping on his knees down the hallways until he reached the kitchen, where Erd in an apron was preparing bacon and eggs with toast. "When did you start learning how to prepare, Erd-chan? Did you learn from Belle?" Hilde asked from behind Naruto, scaring the crap out of him, causing him to jump up with a shout of shock just to be caught by his grandmother for a morning cuddle. "Www, you're so cute. You know, with those kinds of skills, I might have more grandkids to spoil soon," Hilde exclaimed as Erd turned in surprise and flushed. Hilde poured, much to Erd's dismay. Mom, I'm not interested in that, for heaven's sake." Then, before she knew it, She was on her butt, out of the kitchen, and an equally perplexed Naruto was blinking like an owl on her lap. Objected, knowing that it would always happen, but she hated how her mom could throw her off balance and make her feel like a naive schoolgirl. She would have to really screw with someone's head later to get back to normal. A little taken aback, Naruto uttered, "I do not remember moving from her arms to here." Said, "Neither do I." Then she said, "That's why she's cheating at cooking." She slid the door to the side, and they both peered in, seeing Hilde cooking with magic. She closed it slowly and silently. "Are you cheating?" Naruto asked, and grinned, relieved that his dual status as divine and demonic scored an even 50 points higher on the IQ scale. Dealing with children who were naturally inclined toward particular areas was difficult enough, but fortunately, they were intelligent enough to know when to stop and when to calm down. "Yes, according to my sister, cooking requires love and a gentle touch. Personally, I don't understand it," said, half deadpan, and shrugged before grinning. "Now that we've been kicked out, would you like to learn some magic?" she said. "I'll take that as a yes." His eyes glowed so brightly that she wished she had some sunglasses. She then began to explain what mana was and how to use it, starting with the simplest part, going chibi. "What did you think I would say about the workings of magic and shrinking to a chibi? Time skip 10 minutes. "It's done," Hilde declared as she left the kitchen, almost tripping over the mouse-sized and Naruto, but she managed to place all the food on the table before turning to see a chibi Naruto attempting to rouse the stunned who was 4 feet tall and chibi-proportioned. "Oh, Mom, are you alright? Maybe we should have practiced magic away from the door." Naruto mused as he tried to shake awake. She hadn't taught him how to go back to normal yet. Hilde giggled a little at the sight before focusing some of her mana, and in an instant and Naruto were back to normal. Not a good idea because now was still stunned and lying on top of him. "OWW. Get up!" With his size and strength, Naruto gave a powerful shove, but it was insufficient to turn her over and wake her. Sat up and mumbled, "OWW, and that is why going chibi isn't smart sometimes. Gosh. I neglected to snap a photo." When Naruto chose to sit on her for a quick snack, Hilde snapped her fingers in frustration and laughed at half-hearted glare. Sighed and shook her head, wondering what he was doing when he grabbed a pair of chopsticks instead of a fork for the meal. Perhaps he didn't know how to use one, as it wasn't that difficult. Hilde realized when she was about to bite into the food and Naruto had taken it directly off her fork with his chopsticks. "Sneaky little. I'll have to remember to try that myself someday." Said, smiling. It was harmless and pretty cute, if Hilde conjuring a camera and snapping a photo was anything to go by. Shrugged and Naruto started whistling innocently, and was on the alert as she tried to get another bit of food and wound up in a bit of a fencing match to keep it with Hilde taking snapshot after snapshot. "Ha! I triumph." Round 3 started after with her fork in her mouth, gave the camera a victory sign while Naruto pouted a little. After one food fight, is the winner. "Let's give our champion a round of applause." Hilde chuckled dramatically to herself, "But let's not forget our runner-up who put up such a valiant struggle. I just refereed a food fight between my daughter and grandson, in an attempt to be fair to the sulky boy," she declared. Snorted and ruffled his hair when Naruto said, "Not my fault I got full." "Well, it made things easier on us all, squirt." Replied gently. "Anyways, I have a near-endless credit card and you and me need more than business clothes." Replied gently. "Business?" Looking at his vest and indicating that he was only wearing a white t-shirt underneath it, Naruto posed the question. "Yes, demons and gods are involved in the relief, balance, and grieving process. Each of the 3 of us is dressed in what is official for our occupations." Hilde began to ramble until a scroll appeared in front of her in a burst of smoke that smelled of brimstone. She read it and scowled. "And it's going to be even longer. I have duties to attend to," Hilde explained, and Naruto nodded. "But still, some shopping sounds wonderful. It's been so long," Hilde said. She was out the door quickly, and scowled at the dishes before shrugging. "Sorry about this, honey," Hilde said, bending over to kiss on the cheek and Naruto on the forehead. "For now, we'll take care of those later." Purchasing. "Congratulations." Purchasing. What is being bought? It sounds like a ninja technique, but people talk about it. Guys claim it hurts them, while girls claim it makes them look different. What is it? Stared for a moment before bursting into a fit of laughter when Naruto asked everyone in a single breath. When she calmed down, said, "I'll show you, and to most guys it only hurts if they have no sense of fun." Naruto nodded, then leapt on her back and scrambled up onto her shoulders. "All right, then let's go." Cheered and they started out, but she forgot to warn Naruto to duck and he got his forehead smacked by a doorframe. "Oh crap, you okay?" inquired about the possibility of a bruise. Naruto lied and said, "Mommy, There are beautiful stars all over the place, but Erd quickly realized. I'm an expert at lying, but nice try, smart guy. Erd said, really, though, you nearly got me, and Naruto chuckled. Erd laughed as Naruto rubbed his forehead and said, I think I'll walk though and let you bash your head. She said, fat chance o' that, and slowly left with Naruto in tow, ready to demonstrate to store owners the damage that a few thousand years can do to your ability to haggle. Around noon, Mommy? As they left a clothing outlet store, Naruto said, I think you broke her. The receptionist was crying bitterly over the huge loss of profit, and after Erd finished with her, she was practically paying her to take the clothes. Naruto was wearing a tight black shirt with the kanji for trouble on the back, along with baggy gray cargo pants, a pair of shinobi sandals, and a dark purple and blue toga. Like wrap, which was strapless and braless. Mommy, if you wear that too much you might kill someone, Naruto said, as the 930.2 person, if you count the women, got a fire hose class nosebleed and collapsed. I understand, and that's what makes it so enjoyable. The girls are bold and the guys are shy, so APH will love hanging out here. Erd laughed and said, come on, let's go out to eat. I feel like Dango right now. Naruto responded, funny you don't look like Dango. Erd moaned. Come on, Naruto, that person is older than me. She uttered those words. Gosh, that's old, Naruto yelled, and Erd gave him a playful swat, which he sidestepped while grinning. Alright, I had that coming. Erd said, shaking her head, and then grinned as a guy who vaguely resembled a scarecrow with almost all of his face covered walked into a streetlight staring at Erd. Kakashi, if I was too vague. They managed to find a nice looking place that served the stuff and they sat down to eat, although only Erd sat down on an actual seat as Naruto wanted to get into another food fight and was in her lap again. You realize that with no ref we can't have a match, Erd said, grinning. Oh no, dude. Would you like to officiate a food fight, purple head? Everyone stared as Erd quickly covered Naruto's mouth and began laughing at the raw spunk when Naruto yelled out to a nearby kunoichi who was only loosely clothed. I laugh. I apologize so much, hee hee. At this age, he has more guts than brains. Bawahahaha. The laughter stopped as the woman picked up her food and sat down at the table with her, and Erd was alert. She had guessed it exactly yesterday, and this kid was fun, with a capital FU. To people he either didn't like or know, Erd said around her laughter. Sister, don't worry. Even if a guy is a brat, I still like guys with moxie. Erd snorted as Anko jiggled her chest and said, name's Anko Mitarashi, Junin, sexy beast. Don't know how I'm still single with ma girls here. Erd pushed Naruto, who had been listening and assumed he knew how this was going, after saying, Erd, eldest of the 3 Norn sisters, newly adopted mother, drop dead gorgeous and a demon with the curves of a goddess. Naruto grinned foxily and said, Naruto Uzumaki, newly adopted, handsome devil, and on the market. Anko threw some sweet bean soup out of her nose and collapsed from her chair, howling with laughter, and Erd almost fell to the ground with her. Go, kiddo. The entire diner had in some way hurt themselves laughing, with the kid who just laughed with everyone else almost falling off Erd as he did, and Asuma called out a laugh, having almost burst a gut when he heard a freaking 5-year-old flirt with Konoha's notorious snake mistress. Oh. Where did you find this child, Kami? If only half the men in this area had that kind of courage. Anko continued to laugh a few minutes later. Erd said enigmatically, let's just say it's all his doing and leave it at that. Anko grinned. Alright, I understand. Hey kid, look me up if you're still available in 10 or so years and I'm too. You'll be amazing, Anko remarked. Anko flushed when Naruto remarked, peeved like someone like you'll be on the market that long. Da, adorable and brave. She ruffled his hair and said, rare mix for a twerp. Why do women always rub my hair like that? Naruto said, messing his hair up again as Anko laughed. She turned and saw a wall-mounted clock and swore badly, causing Naruto to blink. Hey mommy, what does $? Hash and carrot hash mean? He inquired, and Erd simply glared at Anko, making her flush and perspire. Apologies, I apologize for that. I have to run because my shift begins in 10 minutes. All of this was put on my tab by your waiter. Anko yelled, and the man nodded in time to watch Anko disappear into a whirlpool of foliage. Hi, Naruto? Yes, mommy. Don't say that word again, alright, it's just not a good one. Okay. I mean, insulting someone with a single word would make you look foolish because there are so many other ways to do it. Knowing someone in their foul language is essential if you want to truly get under their skin. Or the fools escape. Erd said, and Naruto nodded, making many in the vicinity perspire at these pearls of wisdom she was sharing. Erd simply smiled at the expressions on their faces as he took another sip of sake. Erd discovered that eating with two hands could completely negate Naruto's ability to snatch food from her and eat at the same time, so they finished quickly. Naruto pouted a little when he was stopped, but Erd just giggled and messed with his hair, making him frown and wondering what the hell is going on with women and his hair. Ah, what's wrong? Do you dislike having your hair messed up by others? Erd posed a playful question. To Erd's amusement, Naruto sulked a little and said, feels weird. Erd led Naruto out without knowing or caring if Anko had paid for the food. Well, come on Tiny, let's stretch our legs a bit. Take in all the sights, we are gonna be here a while after all. After 20 minutes. Oh, please, don't be shy. You're not old enough to enter the men's side by yourself. Erd remarked as she grappled a naked Naruto through the changing area and into the hot springs female section. No. As Erd lifted him up and carried him into the boiling water, Naruto exclaimed, I shouldn't see this. There was laughter and Naruto almost yelled, his eyes screwed shut. He already has a sense of decency, at least. Unfortunately, my own scamp doesn't have any. Sume Inazaka remarked, giggling near a sake saucer. Hey, Naruto, I had no idea you were a prude. It's adorable. Erd cried out as her hold tightened and made it impossible for him to get away. She sat down comfortably and moved the grip once more to hold him with one hand, but he slipped away by acting chibi. As her daughter swam toward the tiny male, Cherry Haruno adjusted her librarian glasses and exclaimed, oh my god. That is so cute. As the baby kicked a little, Tira Hyuga, the wife of Lord Hiyashi, patted her growing belly and held on to Hinata, who was watching with her eyes sparkling. Down, girl. Sume realized he had made a big mistake by going small, so he told Hana, who was halfway to the tiny bobbing blonde who was now swimming frantically, to go back to his mother. Erd pulled him out of the water and put him on top of her head, saying, laughing a little, nice try mini dot man, but you kinda just sealed your own coffin. May I play with the dolly boy, please? Sakura inquired, and Erd chuckled. Erd smiled at the young girl and said, no, you can't play with him, he's very shy and more than a little nervous. Oh, no. Mom, what can I do to change back? When Naruto yelled, his voice could hardly be heard over the water, causing the adults to laugh softly and the young girls to squeal like fangirls. Erd picked him up and whispered to him, okay kiddo, I'll tell you, but let this be a lesson to not rely on these things so much. 3 minutes later, Naruto leapt out of her hands and surfaced in full size once more. Now what did we learn? Erd asked softly, eliciting smiles of approval from the mothers in the vicinity. Naruto said, that one ability can give me an ocean in the bathroom. Erd doused him in water, and he sprang up close and splashed her. Then, the recently released Hinata splashed him, and Sakura and Hana attempted to splash each other, putting nearly everyone in the crossfire. A fast-paced, full-throated splashing match then broke out, with Tira, Erd, Cherry, and Sume evading the fire. All right. According to rumors, your mother is so strong that Lord Hokage is terrified of her. Danzo of Rude is reportedly mumbling about black fire and large breasts in the mental health unit. Want to go into more detail? Erd merely smiled as Tira spoke. My mother terrifies anyone with a modicum of common sense. I'll let you know that she is utterly thrilled to be a grandmother, and let's stop there. Really, the only time I've ever witnessed her that joyful was during my half-sister Mara's birth. Erd said, shivering at a memory, but she was also a little pissed at the circumstances behind it. Under what conditions? Sume inquired, aware that this would be a juicy question. All I know is that there was a bar fight that lasted 50 hours, a war hammer, a gallon of tapioca, a lack of condoms, and roughly 4 cats and a dog that were all in heat. Everyone over the age of 12 started to perspire when Erd said, I became an aunt 9 months later. Oh my god. Who is the father? With her glasses slightly slipping down her nose, Cherry asked. Thor. A lot of heart and compassion, fortunately, but a lot of muscle and stupidity. With arms thicker than my torso and the ability to swing a 2-ton hammer like a toy, this man is the strongest person I've ever met. Erd said, and again, a lot of sweat drops fell. He has a big, fiery beard. Smells like he just left the bar. And a voice so deep I swear I can barely hear it sometimes, Erd said. So, what was the outcome of the child? Tira inquired. Lil Knox. Erd chuckled and said, I apologize for the inside joke. He does a fantastic job of trying to balance the positive aspects of both of his parents, but I can assure you that it's not always simple. He has the most incredible hair and is tall but acrobat. Built. Damn lucky little punk, whispered Erd. Erd shrugged and Sume said, keep going. Erd growled as he recalled the numerous occasions he had messed with her, saying, basically, he's a sarcastic wise ass that's always flipping right. He calls every bluff and more often than not gets himself up to his armpits in trouble. And when I get my hands on him again, I swear I'm going. Hana, act. Have fun. Have fun. As Hana appeared to be ready to deck Sakura, Sume hurried forward to stop her. Erd cracked her knuckles and said, never mind, it's been nearly a decade since I've seen him. He's trying to get out of his punishment for the last time he one-upped me. Sume dragged Hana out of the water and escorted her into the changing room, saying, well, it was nice to get to know you, Erd, but I gotta get this pup home before she hurts someone. Bring your brat over, I have one of my own around his age. Hey, Mom. Chibi is cool, but I want to do more. Can I learn any more magic? Naruto exclaimed with excitement. Like magic eyes, do you mean? Naruto swam up to Hinata as she asked. You possess magical eyes? Awesome. Are they visible to me? When Naruto asked directly in front of her, she blushed a little, swam back, and concentrated, making her pupils slightly visible and the veins surrounding her eyes bulge. Goodbye. Naruto stared as Hinata spoke. Nice, what are they doing? Naruto inquired. I can see through objects and all around me. She added, I can see someone's chakra as well. Hey, may I give it a try? How many fingers am I holding up? Naruto asked, and Hinata nodded before dipping his hands into the water. Hinata raised her hands in response to his question, flipping him off with each one. These ones. Hinata addressed the now shocked audience, and after Naruto nodded, Erd started laughing. Alright, Naruto. As she used some of her mana to chibify Naruto and carried him into the changing room, Erd chuckled and said, anyway, it was nice hanging with you girls, but I gotta get him out of here before he corrupts your daughters. When we get home, you get a crash course in what to do and what not to do. After 10 minutes. How did you manage to do that? Come on, Mom, let me change back, demanded Naruto, who was still chibi but fully clothed. He was a little angry. As Erd moved through the crowds, Naruto said, drawing more than a few looks. Who wouldn't find it strange to see a 3-inch tall boy beg the woman he was standing on? Ignore the fact that it was a foreigner and the Kyuubi brat. Erd teased, now a girl has to have her secrets, Naru-chan. Naruto simply gazed at her. Not fair. This isn't funny, so let me change it back. Erd started to laugh again when she noticed some familiar faces knocking on the front door of her new house, but she stopped when Naruto yelled. As Erd was sneaking up on the guests, which included a tall brunette leaning on a slightly shorter black-haired guy with a small brunette girl on his shoulders, Erd smiled and made hushing gestures to the still miniaturized Naruto, who raised an eyebrow and immediately plotted revenge. Mommy is attempting to frighten you, Naruto shouted. Oh, why don't you ruin my fun? Erd sulked. Alright, let me change back now. As Belldandy Keiichi and his daughter Megumi, named after her deceased aunt, whom she looked like to a T, spun around to reveal their status and facial markings, Naruto yelled, we all know Belldandy's markings, so I'll skip that. Keiichi had a green clockwork gear in the center of his forehead and small loops with a solid circle in each end. Think conveyor belt. On each cheek. The little girl had a green and blue helix on her forehead and each cheek. Oh, it is true, sister, well done. And welcome to the family, little one. Belldandy said sweetly as she hugged Erd and gave Naruto a soft kiss on the forehead, despite the fact that it was the size of his own. Belldandy shot Erd a scathing glance as Naruto complained a little, I wouldn't be so little if she'd let me change back. Oh, alright. Again. Ruin my fun, Erd remarked. Way to use your aunt to guilt me. As she placed Naruto on the ground and he suddenly returned to his typical size, which was still just about waist deep. What is your grandmother's next request for a favor? Erd inquired, and Keiichi grinned while Naruto giggled a little. Erd snorted when Keiichi said, wow, he's been yours for less than 48 hours and he's already causing trouble. Keiichi then shook his head slightly. He's been doing it all by himself, it's not me, it's his instincts, and it's hilarious as hell. In fact, he flirted like an old pro with a woman 3 times his age. Erd boasted as Keiichi turned to face Naruto, his brows lifted and eyes wide. Hi, auntie. A long time. There was not a single sly bone in Megumi's body, and she chirped happily. Erd would swear that they breathed in unison, just like her mother. Hello, Megumi, to you too. What did I say about you calling me auntie, though? Erd questioned, and Megumi put her index finger in her mouth while giving it careful thought. Yes, indeed. You feel old because of it. Erd sighed and palmed his face as Megumi said, beaming. Oh no with you. What will I do? Erd posed the question figuratively, not anticipating a response. As usual, spoil me rotten. Keiichi attempted to quiet Megumi's chirping and soft laughter, but it was too loud. I'm sorry, kiddo, but I have to spoil mine now. Declared. I don't need to borrow you now, and Megumi kicked the walkway. Oh no, pooh. Naruto, who had just learned a much more intriguing word from Anko, raised an eyebrow at this. Then she covered her mouth and blushed like a girl caught swearing. I assume that we are now cousins. It seems that two Anbu retired that day due to stress. They wanted to be in something more humane. Like the torture division. Naruto asked Megumi, whose eyes lit up before glomping him. I swear I'm tasting sugar as she touches me. Naruto thought back to the time he swiped a few sugar packets when he was younger and then proceeded to be a living pinball in Konoha after fueling up. Congratulations. My cousins, oh sorry. Megumi said, backing up and giving him space. And the winner of the Little Miss Saint Award is Megumi Marizata. Thought, grinning, remembering little Megumi's namesake as well. Earnest sweetness was in her blood to the point that she'd put money on a mosquito getting hyper off the little girl's blood. Hey, we might be staying for a little while, can you please show me around? Since I'm not very knowledgeable, let's go exploring. Hey, can you magic the lock open? Naruto exclaimed, and Megumi cheered. They then started running wildly through the complex until they reached a locked door. Megumi nodded when Naruto asked, and then they opened the door with a glowing hand. Ah, what a waste. I'm trying to hide here, kids, so get out. As he frantically attempted to push them out, a boy Naruto's age with shiny copper hair remarked, but together, they were too strong for him. Hold on. My cousin. How are you doing, Nox? Why are you so little? Megumi asked, embracing him with bright eyes. He had two sweeping marks on his forehead, one blue and one red, and a lightning bolt on each cheek that ran down the left and right cheeks, one blue and one red. If chaos magic is effective, it truly is effective. If not, okay, so. Nox, who was wearing loose fitting tan cargo pants and a short sleeved black dress shirt that was undone with nothing underneath, shrugged and said, it comes back and bites you. This kind of cynicism should never come from a 5-year-old. Hi Naruto, Megumi, do you have any something? You, as an unseen wind shook the clothes and hair. Erd's aura turned dark red and her eyes glowed as she spoke slowly, moving from being kind to being royally ticked off. As he backed up nervously, Nox remarked, oh no. I thought I'd at least have time to magic the lock first. Foo. Little Noxarius appears to be experiencing a few minor issues. Why is chaos biting you? As Naruto and Megumi chose to stand behind her, way out of the line of fire, asked in a sickly sweet voice, so what was it when you slipped a gender? Flipping potion into my sake 10 years ago. Yes, indeed. In a flash, had the cork popped and Nox in a headlock with the vial in his mouth and his nose pinched. It was funny. Well, let's see something else, funny little boy, she said, grabbing a vial out of thin air with a fizzing blue liquid inside. He struggled for a few moments before the liquid went down the thick vial and into Nox before it was removed, and his body changed, and not much, but his face softened and his muscle tone vanished. This is low, I don't now, but you had the ability to change it back. My muscles. Nox groaned, lowering himself to his knees. This is low, he said. Oh. Grinned devilishly and said, oh, don't worry, you'll be able to regain your true form once your magic stabilizes again. It looks like I have two nieces now. What will it take? 10 years? 10.5 years, perhaps? Think about this payment for evading your punishment for so long, said slyly. Nox sneezed as she said, you have to take responsibility for your actions. I'm sorry, but I'm allergic to bullshit. Try living up to your words, Miss Part. Time Love Goddess, who finds it intolerable when her mother arranges dates or even makes suggestions about it. Blushed and frowned as Nox shot back. She turned to leave after saying, that's it, I'm calling your parents little lady. What? You're not serious about what they'll do to me, Nox said, grabbing onto her left ankle as she walked and getting dragged. Please, I apologize, but please don't call them for your father's sake. Nox was so shocked that she let go of Erd's leg when he said, all right, I'll make sure your grandmother keeps them off you. Oh shish. I'm in big trouble. No, please don't. For the sake of your father, please don't. Pulled out a cell phone, and Nox yelled as he chased after him. Hi, Mara? Yes, it's and I discovered someone trying to hide in Midgard that you wouldn't believe. Yes, it is him. He's pushing 5 again, apparently after being hit hard by some chaos magic. Oh, that voice. It's him. That's because I did the exact same thing to get him back for that incident 10 years ago. You have a daughter for perhaps 10 years because her magic is still unstable. Oh, you'll be over soon? Tell mom she'll be overjoyed, Erd said on the phone. What was that? Oh, I will definitely tell Thor about it. Okay, see you soon, Erd said, then began dialing again. I'm going to murder you. Nox let out a cry and flung herself onto Erd's leg, where she bit down and lost nearly all of her magic due to being transformed back into a child. Oh no. Take this brat away from me. As she began to run, Erd screamed, and a flash of lightning rumbled in the sky. Just as Erd was about to run out of the house with Nox's fangs in her ankle, a 9-foot tall man with a head of hair and a fiery beard was dropped onto the lawn. What happened when I heard you scream on the phone? After removing Nox from her ankle and examining her markings and hair color, Thor said calmly, I have to remember the last thing I drank and get some more of it. He then put Nox down. Who's the? He asked. Nox brushed herself off and said, No dad, you're not drunk. Well, when I was grabbing Mjolnir, did I forget to put on my gloves? Thor inquired, alluding to the fact that his hammer would strike anyone who touched it with lightning if they didn't have special protective gloves. Despite the nearly 6-foot height difference, Nox stared down at his father and said, No, you are totally sober and not hallucinating in any way, shape, or form. Have you been experimenting with high chaos magic once more? Reluctantly, Nox nodded in response to Thor's question, and why did you bite your aunt? Erd said with a sly smile, that would be because he's a she now. Thor got to his feet and gazed at her. You transformed the heart. Throb brat into a gorgeous girl? Sweetheart, Mara said as she entered the hell portal. Oh no. Nox let out a cry and attempted to flee, but her mother caught her very, very easily. Mara said, Well, I did want a daughter. I apologize for not selecting the appropriate gender 800 years ago. Nox spat but went pale when his grandmother stepped through the portal. Oh no. This is simply too much right now, Hilde exclaimed, crouching a little to be eye-to-eye with Nox in her new form. There was a silence for all of 2 seconds until Kute. Gubbing Nox into a bone. Crushing embrace. Hilde squealed. Oh, I can't wait to braid this hair. Oh, perhaps you'll begin to talk about cute boys and identify with girls. Hilde started crying as soon as Belldandy, Keiichi, Megumi, and Naruto entered. You're not telling the truth. What happened, Nox? With a deadpan expression on his face, Keiichi asked. Keiichi raised an eyebrow and simply looked at Erd when Nox said, Chaos magic backlash and anti-Erd do the math. What? Come on, man. He was worthy. Oh my. Well, Nox, you are quite fetching for a young girl, if that is any kind of compensation. Yet you might want to button your shirt, Belldandy said, lowering himself to the child's eye level. Oh my, Erd, how is your ankle doing? Belldandy looked at Nox and she blushed. Damn it, does she have to be such a freaking saint? Nox swore to himself. Erd said, a little monster bit it. She used a small amount of mana to heal her leg painlessly. You're a girl now, then? Naruto asked and Nox nodded with regret and Naruto burst out laughing, just to get socked in the jaw. Hey, even though you aren't a real girl, I can still hit you. Well, short stuff, put your money where your mouth is. When Nox threw her arms out in defiance of him taking a shot, he took it directly to the face, starting a mini battle that turned into a real one as they both shrank to 3 inches tall and continued fighting until Megumi picked them both up and held them apart. You ought not to fight. It's awful, Megumi said, and Nox looked at her disbelievingly. I'm half demon. I'm meant to be evil. Your mom taught you how to prevent close-range transformations, didn't she? Nox objected, then he focused and made a deadpan face. Megumi cheerfully nodded in response to Nox's question. Unhun. I learned from her 3 weeks ago, Megumi boasted. One of the 7 deadly sins, isn't pride? Nox asked, and as Nox smiled, a look of sheer horror overcame her face and she began to cry. No, it wasn't my intention. I'm a decent girl. Megumi's face was filled with nothing but horror and grief as she said, I have to be. Gosh darn Nox. You're a good girl, Megumi. Belldandy grabbed Nox and Naruto from her and gave them to their mothers, but Keiichi remarked, Nox was just acting like a jerk like he usually does. All it takes is 8 words to make a goddess cry. Tonight, I'll take you out for a beer. Oh, I apologize a minor once more, Mara uttered. You're screwed. Nox shouted right into her ear. Mara simply flicked him away and he caught himself by unfurling his wings. The right one was black up till the joint, then a pristine white with the left being a color swapped opposite. In that same instant he expanded to his normal size. Sorry, my original image of Nox was a male jerk with a golden heart, so I'm having a problem making him a her. Not funny, mom, she gave a crossly shout. Don't be a whiner, girl. I will not compel you to go to Niflheim or Asgard. Thor hefted Mjolnir with one hand and remarked, I'm sure that the young ninja here would be all too happy to have a lass like you among them. I've heard that the ninjas can learn advanced healing techniques without the use of magic, Belldandy said. Really? Wow, said Megumi. Ninja, huh? Erd asked, beaming down at Naruto, who raised his head and returned the sly smile. Incredible. Thor held Nox up and gave her a level look. I'm here for only 30 minutes, and then I'm drafted into the local freaking militia, Nox said. Nox moved her head closer, seemingly in search of a bluff, as Thor remarked, you're either a ninja here or I'm taking ye back to Asgard, and Bastet has been yowling for her blood. With wide eyes, Nox uttered, by the father, you're serious. We'll also have to get you a new wardrobe too, Mara was thinking. What? Belldandy remarked, oh yes, such an outfit is unbecoming of a young woman. On the day of the demon, what is this pick? Nox insisted. Erd responded, well, seeing as I'm fine, I'd say no. She received a glare from someone who was literally staring at her with demon eyes. I suppose that then Thor and I will be watching Naruto? Keiichi inquired. An afternoon out for a girl? Hilde proposed. As Mara made her transform into a chibi, Nox exclaimed, oh, someone just kill me. Erd walked away with swaying hips, saying, hold the fort first, boys. Belldandy and Keiichi shared a quick kiss, and Thor grabbed Naruto to keep him from fleeing. Hey dude, are there any decent restaurants here? Naruto smiled when Thor asked him. As she was being dragged into a changing room where Erd had gleefully placed an outfit that she and Megumi had chosen, Nox said with a voice full of venom, I hate you all and all that you stand for. Even me? Megumi inquired. When she saw her crying, Nox smiled and said, especially you. Erd then slapped her in the side of the head. Treat your cousin well, she told him, glaring at her while Hilde and Mara were laughing. The head bop was enough to get her pushed into the changing room. Erd said, now you're not getting out until you put that on. Nose began banging on the door, which actually shook a little, and there was a brief period of silence. Through the door, Nox said sharply, okay, it's on. I've been listening, and you haven't changed at all. Nice try, wise guy, until I see you wearing a sweater, tight shorts, a short skirt, stockings, shoes, and a Neko hat, you won't leave. All pink, Erd smirked. Nox swore darkly, and there was the sound of rustling clothing. It's done, she said, and Erd opened the door, causing multiple camera flashes to go off in Hilde's and Mara's direction. I'm going to hurt you in ways and places you can't even imagine. See, Megumi, I told you all pink would be a good look, Erd said as Megumi ran up to Nox and began ogling the outfit, while Nox grimaced and attempted to slam the door. Oh, it's adorable, I also want one, could I please have one, mommy? Belldandy gave Megumi a gentle nod when she asked. Nox glared at them and swore, if this is bought, it's getting burned the moment the transaction is complete. They scowled at one another as Erd remarked, okay, but we are leaving here with at least a week's worth of girl clothes. With red eyes, Nox said, fine, but I get to say what clothes I get. Erd said, okay, but one of us has to approve. Nox slammed the door and changed back in a hurry. After 2 hours, Nox, wearing a tight black tee, shirt and shorts, a blue skirt, a green vest, and a pair of shinobi sandals, said ominously as she left the store, you do realize that I will be carving this out of your hides. Erd had magically attached the pink Neko hat to her head. Even mine? Megumi inquired naively. Yes, Nox said in a voice full of poison, and Megumi flinched in terror. Mara then slapped Nox once more. Nox swatted at her hand as Mara chastised him, saying, if you're going to snap, at least bring her to tears. Nox glared up at her mother and said dryly, I am 840. 3 years old, I do not need a lesson in manners. Your magical abilities are almost completely gone, you are 3 feet tall, and you lack sexual drive. In addition to being incredibly adorable, Hilde responded, you are a child in need of guidance. She grabbed the side of Nox's cheek and exclaimed. Grandma, stop it. Most gods are infants in comparison to you, oh crap. Nox yelled at her, and a twitch appeared above Hilde's eyes. Oh crap. Nox tried to run away, but Hilde grabbed her right away and spanked the young girl so hard that she screamed. You never bring up a woman's age, I guess I'll have to go over all of your manners with you again. Hilde said, each word accompanying an echoing spank. And Hilde frowned and observed, little brat used her magic to knock herself out. That's one way to get over the pain, then. But she didn't really think as to what we could do to her in her sleep, Mara wrote, and Belldandy shot her a stern look, which she ignored. Now I say we mind screw her so that she becomes a girl among girls without even knowing it, Mara said, and then Nox's arm suddenly swung out, snatched a passing ninja's giant shuriken, and got sucked into it. Little brat was faking it. Hilde laughed, but Mara cursed. She's in Konoha, so don't worry. Where else can she go? She has too many enemies in Niflheim and Asgard to feel completely safe anywhere else. Hilde explained. Besides, I can always do this. Her arm sprang forward and vanished, and she snapped it back while holding Nox by her vest. Nox said, crap. Now let's get you settled into that room you were so dead set at staying in not too long ago and we'll be done, replied. By the way, I reset it for you, Nox, and this adorable little number is now your work attire. Hilde remarked, it isn't appropriate for a girl to go around with a bare chest after all. Nox cursed so loudly that Megumi passed out, and this time, as they passed through the archways, Belldandy slapped her. I'm still in shock that you had so much. You're worse than your mother with Sokka copyright, kid. Good grief. After saying this, Keiichi reappeared with Naruto following him, and a tiny motherboard from a computer he had left on the front step flashed. Where is the oaf now? Mara inquired. Keiichi said, he only came down because he heard Erd scream over the phone when Nox bit her. Erd then swatted Nox once more. Some business in Asgard. Stop it. Nox yelled at her, and Erd bit her hand forcefully when he attempted to swat her again. You were a freaking jerk. Erd yelled, snatching her hand away and launching Nox into the air, where he collided with Naruto. Nox got up and muttered, damn it, I miss my magic. Now I'm stuck here and like this. $carrot and ing brilliant. Nox cursed, and Naruto laughed, saying, oh shut up. Create me. Oh, Naruto said and got socked in the face. The brawl from earlier resumed except this time Nox shrunk to avoid a high kick and went back to normal size to give a vicious uppercut. No fair. You cheated, Naruto cried out. Demon. Nox said, flashing her fangs in a ferocious smile. In any event, how about we all just get settled before taking the kids to the Shinobi Academy tomorrow? Belldandy said in her usual amiable way. A good night's sleep and a filling breakfast will put us all in better moods, and everyone agreed. What on earth do you mean that we must share a bed? In any case, it's only 10 hours later, Nox was heard yelling. Mara's protests were interrupted by a surge of power, and the remainder of the night proceeded peacefully and without incident. Nox, I'm amazed that you have no manners at all. Nox gave a loud, harsh burp when Keiichi asked around the fast table. Nope, none. Nox smiled at the frustrated expressions. After an hour, the lunch bell rang shortly after the class, which appeared to be more of a massive history lesson than ninja training, and the teacher, a young woman with thin figure and lines of gray in her brown hair, was taking attendance. Megumi received a smile for her sweet mannerisms. Nox chalked her head upside down for napping, and Naruto a shout because he wouldn't calm the hell down. Hey, what? What? Yes, I did. What are you going to do about it? Before Naruto struck her in the head and delivered the retaliatory blow straight to Nox's stomach, she mumbled drowsily. Nox got up, muttering, as Naruto said, come on catgirl, lunchtime. Get moving. The lunches prepared by mother will be delicious. Naruto smirked, Nox moaned, and Megumi said, laughing a little at the joke. Nox muttered, well duh, your mother's basically a divine maid who can't get her head around the slightest dark concept. A slug is better rounded than her. Megumi recognized it and began to cry. Nox, why must you always act like such a jerk? Naruto spit in her face. Nox answered, demon, it's in the job description. You prick are also half goddess. Would it kill you to be a little more like your father? Naruto retaliated angrily. Yes. How difficult is it to balance two sides, do you know? Before your mother figured out the trick, she had to ignore grandma for thousands and thousands of years. The energies within you will tear you to pieces if you don't do it correctly. The mind is therefore either in god mode or demon mode. Despite the parallels between spirits and gods, Megumi is totally on her goddess side. It takes a lot to balance them properly. Even though I'm mostly in my demon half, I'm trying. There is a third section that allows you to jump back and forth without any issues. So don't criticize me. Naruto blanched as Nox growled in his face. How strong are we, exactly? With a halting breath, he asked. Any of our parents could create it. These powers are linked to our emotions and souls. We must control them or they will control us, Nox said, snapping her fingers. Since I don't have much control over my divine abilities, they will take over and dominate me if I use them excessively or act like a god too much. I take action. No desire. That. 2. Naruto took a step back as she gritted her teeth and said, happen. So you have to be mean even though you don't want to? Nox snorted when Naruto asked. With a sour purr in the back of his mind, Nox remarked, hardly, it's just that there are a lot of people that still won't let me forget the last time I was nice. In other words, it's like getting drunk in one way or another. You have to pick your poison. The same is true for all immortals. We are still human, and our power has a tremendous pull in all directions. So yay, I'm an asshole and proud of it, Nox remarked. Your mother has been helping me come to terms with Pop's blood, but it's only been the last 20 years that I could even acknowledge him as my Pops without losing myself. Does this issue affect everyone? Megumi shook her head in response to Naruto's question. No, hybrids aren't that common. You, me, Noxarius, and your mother are the only 4 people I am aware of. We don't have a third blood to protect us because you and the rest of us are half breeds. Nox sneered in agreement as she followed them both out, saying, anyway, we better go. I think the teacher might start to listen in soon and that would be bad. Where are we dining, then? As a small group of students hurried up to them, Naruto asked and arched an eyebrow. Hey, that guy who got small is you. Is it possible for you to repeat? A voice in the group identified it as Sakura's, and then Nox vanished. Well, if I'm small, my lunch will be larger. Beat it now, she muttered, then shouted the final line so loudly that some of them fell backwards. Terrified by the tone, they fled. That was fun, Nox said, stretching and regaining her normal size before Naruto punched her in the head. For heaven's sake, you didn't need to frighten them. What's the matter with you? He made a demand, and Nox gave him a direct glare. Demon. You freaking stupid mutt, get it through your head that I'm a bad guy, Nox yelled in his face, pointing to her markings. I am a monster. A bad guy. I am malevolent. His eyes widened as Nox growled into his face. SNRK. Peeved. Hee. Naruto responded directly to her face, that's a good one, you're not evil. A jackass yay but not evil. Nox gave him a nose flick before leaving on his own. What's wrong with her? Naruto questioned, not really anticipating a response. A terrible, terrible thing happened. She's still in excruciating pain, despite the fact that it happened 2 centuries ago, Megumi said, her heart in her eyes. What? Curious, Naruto asked. It's not for me to say. I don't really know everything myself, but I do know that she tried to be good, got really hurt, and hurt someone else so badly that she might try to kill her if she ever sees her again. Naruto's eyes widened as Megumi spoke. All right. Why bother her so much? Why cause her pain if it already exists? As they located a place beneath a tree, Naruto inquired. You can ignore a big pain by ignoring a little one. Amidst the chaos of last night, she was transformed into a 5-year-old, then a girl, then the clothes, and finally, she slept with her mother. Megumi clarified, she was actually able to sleep for the first time in 200 years, and Naruto let go of the sushi he had been eating with his chopsticks. How could it be that bad? What could possibly cause such severe harm to a demon? Megumi shrugged in response to Naruto's question. I'm not sure why, but nobody talks about it. Everyone just gets really depressed or furious, and nobody says anything. I only know that Nox and Bast had an incident, and now she wants to harm him, and he is too depressed to stop her, Megumi cried out. Stop talking, you two. Even Kami wouldn't find anything wrong with me hurting you two so severely for discussing this, Nox remarked as he leaned around the tree. However, what is it? How could it be so awful? Being overly inquisitive, Naruto was punched in the face, hard enough to knock him unconscious, and he returned to consciousness approximately 10 minutes later. Do you realize how much pain Nox is in now? Megumi inquired. Naruto rubbed his jaw where she belted him and said, I see how much of a dick she is. How much lunchtime is left? Megumi stated, after about 20 minutes, the class splits into boys and girls. Look, Naruto, there are some topics that aren't discussed. Megumi stated, one of them is what happened between Nox and Bast. The remainder of lunch was consumed in silence until roughly 5 minutes prior to the bell. I'm not fat, a boy yelled. You're only 3 feet too short, right? Nox yelled back. I have a big bone. As Naruto and Megumi entered the scene, Choji roared back. Both whales and walruses have large bones. You're fat as hell because you're not an aquatic mammal, Nox yelled back. Oh no. Choji let out a war cry and attempted to smash Nox, but the delicate-looking girl's hand stopped him. Look chunky, you're going to get gutted like a pig if you lose your temper over one insult. The real world is knocking, and this is your wake. Up call, Nox said in a menacing tone. What? as he attempted to push the girl away, who was now holding him at bay with 2 fingers on his collarbone. Choji snarled, glaring daggers at her and kicking up the ground. Nox said, "Pathetic." He stepped aside, allowing Choji to fall flat on his face and bite the sod. "Look, Porker, you need to learn to take insults. Many fighters will taunt you in an attempt to distract you. If you lose your temper, you will lose the fight." As Choji walked back towards the academy in time to hear the bell ring, Nox stepped on her back and said, "Learn to keep it chunky." "What a hassle. Are you alright, Choji?" Shikimaru inquired, glancing at the boy who had just rolled over and was deeply contemplating. "Am I? Have a short fuse? Is it truly that awful?" Choji inquired. "All right. Problematic." Shikimaru began. "All someone needs to do is say fat and—" "I'm not fat," Choji yelled. "You see? She is implying that you become angry too easily," Shikimaru said in his usual slack-jawed way. "It's annoying, but she's right. Anyone can manipulate you and make you do something foolish, and I'd rather not have my best friend fall into a trap." "I'm not looking forward to being here if she is," Choji replied. Shikimaru said, "Me neither. 11 years have passed, either too quickly for some or too slowly for others, but let's take a quick look at some of the more significant, defining, or just plain funny moments. In addition to answering a few questions, the S will be notified, and they are not in any particular order. Following the S, we will see the general exams. I'm afraid to ask, but why the hell do you have bagpipes at 3 in the morning in the middle of a residential area?" says Naruto, who was strolling alone in the Uchiha district when he saw Nox carrying a pair of bagpipes of all things. She shrugged when he asked, staring at her incredulously. She uttered the words, "having a little fun," and then let out a loud cry from the pipes. "Fire! Set a fire!" she shouted, getting the proper pitch and rhythm of an alarm. "Fire, fire!" As they heard a lot of swearing as people hurried out of their houses in search of the flames, she yelled, still holding it, "They're done." Nox added, "They'll be in a panic all night." Naruto arched an eyebrow. "How?" Naruto remarked, "As soon as they realize it was a gag, they'll just go back to sleep." Nox then produced a flattened paper airplane and threw it at a nearby wall, where it exploded and caused fire to spread across the surrounding walls in the streets. "Why?" Nox walked up to a nearby alleyway and touched a trash can lid to blend into the metal, saying, "Oh, relax, they were gonna demolish these buildings tomorrow anyways." Naruto swore, ran headlong, and disappeared into the flames, saying, "Oh shit, I gotta bail." "Well, Miss Nox. I got this for you," Ryu said, passing Nox a daisy before leaving the nearly empty classroom with the other students staring at him. He ran a nervous hand through his untidy brown hair and left a shocked demon in his wake. WH. What the devil? Nox inquired. Astonished, Naruto exclaimed, "Holy crap." Megumi blushed and whispered, "Oh dear." Shikimaru was still asleep, and Choji was just staring. When Nox arrived home, she immediately grabbed a butcher knife and began chasing Erd, saying, "I'm going to kill you for using that potion on me. Screw the DUBLET system, you're dead." Norn. Hilde, who had a video of the entire incident, stopped her as she screamed and ran after Erd, who had used a potion to get her a date with Ryu. Although he had been a perfect gentleman, Nox still fully identified as a man and therefore owed Erd one murder with a kitchen knife. Nox, who was now blushing and cursing in 20 different languages while Hilde held her back with one hand and giggled, had been kissed by the sweet gushy girl that potion had made her. "Am I the only one being followed?" When class ended, Naruto inquired. As they walked home, Nox said, "Well, we are, but I'm going to say you're delusional anyways." "Good heavens, who is pursuing us?" Megumi inquired, a little alarmed. "You two are close, good grief. They have crushes on either one of you," Nox said, receiving a sidelong glance of surprise from both of them before they sighed and facepalmed. "It's your freaking fan clubs and stalkers." Megumi smiled and started to turn, but Nox stopped her and prevented her from continuing forward, accompanied by a frightened Naruto who didn't need any encouragement. How sweet. "It's not the cute way, Megumi, it's the climb into your window and cut some of your hair for a shrine way," Naruto remarked, shivering. "They're surprisingly good at stealth." "Okay, I think for some twisted masochistic reason some of them are after me too," Nox said quietly. "Ow, damn it, Nox, are Ryu and Nox in a car naked?" Naruto started to sing, but he was kicked in the shins, which would have broken a human's bones and caused minor bruises to an immortal. "The current plan is for us to separate and teleport straight home using our respective mediums." When Megumi, the park's approaching, ducks behind a tree and vanishes. "I'll hit an alleyway and use a garbage can or sewer grill," and Naruto will hit the roofs with a minor kaiden at low power and dive into it. Are you ready? Nox asked and both nodded. She yelled, and the three of them took off, Megumi running into a park, swinging around a tree, and disappearing into the bark, Nox running to the left, and Naruto leaping high and out of sight. There was a sudden flare of fire at the family estate, and as Megumi stepped out of a nearby tree, panting a little, and Nox shot out of the iron grate, Naruto flew through a series of 3 hand signs, breathed a fireball the size of his head, and dove into it, disappearing while Nox ran along the alley and fell into the metal of a sewer grill. Fans. Why were fans required? Megumi asked and Nox snorted. What? I mean it's unsettling to think that they are considering me so much, Megumi remarked. Yes, but your mom wouldn't agree. Megumi blushed slightly as Naruto remarked, you're finally displaying your father's side. Well, that's all it is. Megumi began to explain, well, you know, knowing someone like Nox. Naruto gave Nox a curious glance, and she shrugged. I know that not everything is completely good, Megumi said, and Nox nodded. Megumi was being stared at and becoming anxious, which was more than the group of normal boys who kept asking her out. She found it endearing but politely turned down all of their advances, and she was alarmed that Nox had started tying up her pursuers, stripping them naked, and leaving them in the middle of the market. She quickly lost her fan club. She was beginning to feel anxious during her lunch, so she calmly walked around a nearby tree with a swing on it and disappeared into the woods without anyone noticing, starting her custom of eating at home. The 3 Immortal Academy students were watching a chase scene between Sasuke Uchiha and his fan club when Nox said to Naruto, who gave her a sidelong glance, 50 Ryo says they capture and rape him. Naruto smiled and said, shirt and shorts get ripped off but he gets away. Megumi said, escapes and lives happily ever after. Slowly, Nox and Naruto turned to their left and met her gaze directly. What? Nox shook her head and moaned when she asked. Do you see Naruto? Naruto nodded as Nox remarked, full on deities or pansies. However, demons don't have any friends, Megumi objected. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who I can't depend on when it gets to the wire, replied Nox. Playing the straight man once more, Naruto told the quarreling and distantly related cousins, okay, you've both made your points, drop it now. By the way, Nox, you owe me 50 Ryo, you too Megumi. Naruto said coolly as a nearly nude last Uchiha ran off below them. Son of a fucking bitch. Nox cursed as he gave Naruto the cash, while Megumi smiled and gave him hers. With no one else in sight, Nox opened the door and saw a woman a little shorter than himself staring at him with a cat's head. Hello Bast, he said. She was gorgeous despite her feline features, wearing an elegant toga with golden clasps, and had a lot of Egyptian influence in all of her features. I see I'm having nightmares again, Nox said calmly, knowing that his true 6'6" athlete's form had been restored and that only one mark on his head was red to herald his demonic nature. The others were a crystal blue. Get punished for taking our child's life, she screamed and used a scimitar to stab him in the stomach. Knowing full well that the tears would not stop, he responded, it was a miscarriage, I could not have killed our child any more than you could. Stop talking. You killed her, and I can't have a miscarriage because I am a goddess of motherhood. Bast screamed and tore into him with her claws, and Nox was powerless to stop her as she tore his body apart while simultaneously sobbing and screaming resentfully. She woke up with a heavy breath, sat up with a moan, and shed a few tears before her markings went back to their typical almost completely red color as she threw away her sorrow and lay down again. The only difference was a small bit of blue on her left cheekbone, where a tear had unnoticed turned that touch of red to blue. I don't get it, I haven't had that dream since I moved here. Why this evening? After she passed out, she thought, by hell, please don't tell me that it's because mom isn't here. I became an adult when I turned 18, so I can't be such a kid anymore. However, Megumi is just as old as I am and never grew up. When they discovered a dead body, Naruto, Megumi, and Nox were all traveling to school the picturesque Waya that is, without teleporting. Nox? Naruto called out to her. Nox objected, and Naruto gazed. Hey, that's not my handiwork, I don't leave the faces on, what? Whoa, this is a member of the Uchiha military police, right? Megumi gasped in response to Naruto's question, and Nox shrugged. As both Naruto and Megumi gazed, Nox said calmly, yep, and was blindsided by a high-level user of a ninjutsu who primarily used Iaido instead of kendo-style swordsmanship common to single-blade slashing swords. What now? Nox inquired. How on earth were you aware of that? Naruto inquired. My goody. 2. Shu god side may not be in tune with me, but it is a god of war. As a result, I can quickly read battles and their aftermath. This individual was caught in the act by a far more formidable adversary who had him exactly where he wanted him. A fight shouldn't be like this. This is just wrong. Nox said slowly, staring at the corpse. This was no fight, this is slaughter. She didn't realize that the small sliver of blue on her left lightning bolt marking had widened, but it did so nonetheless. Let's just get out of here. There's nothing we can do either way but piss on the corpse, and out of all three of us only I want to, and only Naruto really can. Nox said, getting a thrill from the expressions on their faces. Well, Megumi? What is that? As she fumbled with an envelope she had discovered in her book bag, Naruto posed the question. Oh, it's a letter. Megumi paced uneasily and blushed. From whom? Naruto asked, and she blushed deeper and mumbled something that no human could have caught, but to Naruto it was loud and clear. Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto exclaimed in shock. It's unbelievable that he wants one of the two girls, but she isn't interested in him. Nox grinned broadly and said, I think he knows that if he gave me that letter, I'd pass it to one of his fangirls with a little modification and watch the fun. What if I borrowed that letter for a little while? Say Megumi. Megumi stepped back from her as she asked, and Nox sulked. Killjoy. So, will you really meet him or do whatever he requests? Megumi blushed and nodded in response to Naruto's question. Why are we doing this again, please? As they followed Megumi and Sasuke on a date, Naruto questioned Nox. First, I'm interested. Secondly, the potential for blackmail is enormous. 3. As Naruto prepared to perform a fire jutsu, he declared, I'm going home. We're checking on her, and it's good stealth training? Nox said hastily, causing Naruto to sigh and cease forming energy. Nox's eyes widened and then narrowed as Naruto threatened. Fine, but if I catch you trying to blackmail her, I'll tell your mother you've started to return Ryu's feelings without sneaking things in your food. Might as well have been going steady with the child because of that, which simply infuriated Nox. Nox remarked, and if you do that I'll tell yours and Belldandy that you've developed a crush on Megumi. They squinted at one another for a minute before exclaiming, oh shit, where did they go? They let us down. Nox cursed. Gosh. They both sighed and teleported home after Naruto said this. Nox leapt into an empty dumpster in the alley below, while Naruto used a fire jutsu. All three of them had been spying on Nox and Naruto, as well as Megumi and Sasuke, and Belldandy giggled a little at the idea of her daughter going on her first date, while snickered at the argument between Naruto and Nox. Aw kids, it's great the way they're getting along so well, Mara said, snickering slightly. Still, Naruto's really bringing out the best in both of them. Now we have a date to spy on, concluded. But we ought to respect their privacy, sister, Belldandy said. I trust Megumi to be responsible and come straight home if something happens. If something happens she will tell me about it. This effectively put an end to the stalking atmosphere. Joykill. Said, let's just go home and pester them about it later, and left. Following Megumi and Sasuke, Mara said, well, I'm gonna keep watching, get some good material. Belldandy put a thin shield over her daughter to keep Mara from finding her after saying, oh dear. As he blew out a cloud of smoke from his pipe, Sarutobi said, alright Hades, I'll see your 80 and raise you another 40. Sarutobi was playing Texas Hold. Like an old pro, with Lucifer beyond him, Odin after him, and Ra after him. It was the final hand, and Ra whistled. Lucifer appeared uneasy and a little fidgety. This human was cunning. There was a 10 and ace and a jack all spades. Lucifer had a terrible sneaking suspicion as to where the queen and king were. Crap, I must fold. Ra said, exposing a pair of twos before taking a gulp of wine from a bottle. Hades stroked his ash-white beard, and Odin scratched the side of his jaw. Lucifer sighed and revealed that he had a jack and an ace. I fold too. With a 3 and 8 sigh, Odin said, don't need the well of wisdom to tell me where this is going. Sarutobi simply maintained a straight face while he heaved up a tankard of ale to wash down some garlic bread that was on the table. Oh, damn it, I'll just cut my losses. Hades tossed down his cards without even flipping them, saying, let's see monkey. Sarutobi laughed and held up his hand, which contained the diamond and heart 10. You unbelievable bastard. As Lucifer began to howl with laughter, he yelled. Goodness gracious. Ra exclaimed, embarrassed by being outdone by a mortal. Before starting round 10, Odin filled his tankard once more and drank it as quickly as before, saying, I'm glad I'm drunk. You're more than just a human, Lady Hilde. Lucifer laughed as he remarked, this was the first time a human had defeated me, and the irony was so deliciously difficult to take in. Heh. Sarutobi laughed as he said, and the mortal takes the pot. He knew that these four would remember this for a very long time and would continue to be angry with him long after he was gone. "Hi, Nox. What would you ask for if you could only have one wish?" After Hilde had told him the gloomy details of Nox's encounter with Bastet, Naruto inquired. "Where in hell did that originate?" Nox inquired. Naruto uttered, "Humor me." Nox said, "Bite me." Her eyes grew wide. "Not literally, you little bastard." As he attempted to get a good bite on her leg, she screamed and beat him around the head. "All right, I wish Bast had never masqueraded you fucking happy." Knowing he was on thin ice, he retreated when she yelled at him. "Another job well done for the goddess of love," Erd thought to herself as she saw a certain lavender-eyed girl watching her son and grinning viciously. She hurried home and picked up a small vial, and when she found the girl again, she made herself invisible and tipped the contents onto the girl's head, where it was immediately absorbed and Hinata never felt anything. After that, all of her belongings simply disappeared. Erd ran forwards recklessly, tackled Naruto, and then attempted to pry out his tonsils using only her tongue. Skuld had just arrived, and she and Erd were soon engaged in combat before Nox, of all people, broke it up. "Move it, broads," she yelled and knocked them back a little. "What's wrong with you, poison girl? At 6, did you get your first period?" As Skuld attempted to catch up, Erd called. She had been extremely busy updating Yggdrasil, Ardrasil, and Nordrasil to maintain optimal efficiency following the completion of a 50-year project 3 days earlier. The supercomputers of heaven, hell, and purgatory. "You Erd. Skuld's has a censorship aura, which is imperfect," Nox exclaimed. "Oh, that's just hilarious." Erd patted her sister on the shoulder and said, "Welcome to the madness, Skuld. All right, pupils. All of you did incredibly well on the Genin exam." With a pointed glance up at his 3 immortal students seated, Iruka said, "But 3 of you could have done better if you weren't so eager to play around, outright insult the examiners, or so downright humble." It was fairly easy to guess who had done what. They had grown over the years and developed their powers to a potent level. They were each in their standard, immortal, clothing with only a few add-ons. To Naruto the add-on was that he had a fishnet muscle shirt under his vest and a pair of fingerless gauntlets that reached down to his elbows. Megumi was in a green version of her mother's own outfit that suited her well as she began to resemble Belldandy over her late Aunt Moore. Nox hadn't changed much but had, to her utter embarrassment, grown out very well and for some reason couldn't either teleport out of Konoha or use her shapeshifting abilities. She had a sneaking suspicion someone was blocking it. She was right to scratch the surface. The culprits are Hilde, Mara, Thor, Loki, Lucifer, Mao, Beelzebub, Skuld, Erd, Pan, Aphrodite, and the list goes on and on and on. So she had added a T-shirt and was wearing an unzipped black hooded jacket in place of a semi-formal T-shirt unbuttoned. She had also done all in her power to stay away from skirts, so she was in comfy-looking track pants and sandals as well. One team. Nox cheered as Iruka read, Naruto Uzumaki, Megumi Mirazata, and Nox Demonies under Athena Olympia. Yes. At last. She will at least force us to engage in violent combat. After yelling, Nox turned off the classroom. Before a woman with short brown hair, sharp features, a heavily muscular build, and a halberd slung over her shoulder entered the room, Iruka began, "All right, that enough now." "Hey!" She yelled at them before advancing in the opposite direction. Nox Naruto Megumi up on the roof. The 3 best and worst students Iruka had ever had bailed after he said, "All right, you 3 just go." They were on the roof in a matter of seconds. Perfect timing. "Now take a seat. I suppose I'll begin since I've been told that a formal introduction is one of the customs around here. My name is Athena, and I'm from the Olympic Pantheon, as you are aware. I am the goddess of owls, war, and the hearth. I use axes, spears, and the earth itself in my battles. I enjoy a good fight, a well-prepared meal, and a quiet night under the stars. When someone can't move on from themselves or put things in other people's faces, I detest it. My element is earth, and I get my energy from hot beverages and use stones for transportation." Athena said, "You next, Blondie," and Naruto smiled. Uzumaki Naruto. The demon of vengeance, the spirit of chaos, and the god of hope. Mom is the reason I belong to the Norse pantheon. Naruto grinned slyly and continued, referring to the fact that some villagers were still on his case, "I like playing with fire and screwing with people's heads. I use all sorts of fire and lightning attacks in battle, but I normally use them up close, the expressions on their faces. I dislike people who can't let go of things that happened and bloody well move on despite everything logical telling them to do so. My energy source is ramen, and my element is fire with lighting mixed in like Mom's." I teleport using fire, he said with ease. As you are aware, my name is Noxarius, or simply Nox. I am a prince of hell, but since I am a demon first and foremost, I am not in a pantheon. If I were, though, I would be in the Norse pantheon because of my father. Naruto, quit. In any case, I am a demon of poison and a god of war, she yelled, slapping the laughing blonde across the face. When I fight, I use a variety of tainted weapons, but I don't mind severing someone in two with my bare hands. I don't like something going completely wrong. I really want to return to my freaking natural form because I enjoy a good fight. My element is metal with a potent poison mixed in, and my transportation medium is again metal, Nox said, growing irate, which caused the girls to start laughing, and Naruto laughed at the last line. There were a few smiles when Nox said, spicy food is my energy source, so I go all out on curry and tacos. Megumi Marizata. I am a goddess of healing and a spirit of nature, and I am also a part of the Norse pantheon. I prefer to heal and protect, but I don't fight. I detest seeing people in pain and when people try to harm one another. While I enjoy helping others, I also enjoy reading a good book while relaxing under a tree on a sunny day. My energy source is sunlight, Megumi said shyly, adding, I also like my boyfriend. She whispered, plants of all kinds are my element and my teleportation focus. Excellent. What are you three doing now? Passed a qualification exam with ease. You must locate me and defeat me in combat as the actual genin exam starts now. Athena declared, this is my only teleportation, and I will not leave Konoha, before leaping from the building and sinking into the courtyard's stones. Oh, it's too simple. Nox smiled and held out her hands, saying, come on, you two. I can take you to her instantly. Where? Megumi inquired. Both Naruto and Megumi rushed forward, grabbed her arm, and vanished into the metal pole as Nox said, you'll see. Come on, I'll need all the help I can get, she's a first-class war goddess. Holy shit. Athena shouted as Nox followed by Naruto and Megumi soared out of her halberd, and she was soon dodging a naginata dripping with poison as well as close-range fire blasts and the fact that all of nature was ganging up on her. She stomped the ground causing it to and shoot up spires and walls in a hope to divide them, but Naruto charged through as the grass grabbed her by the sandals and Nox came down with the naginata dripping with acid. All right, you win, she yelled. Don't let it get to your heads, the three of them said, smiling at her as the attack came to an end. I didn't think any of you had mastered your abilities yet. She said confidently, you have a long way to go against a war god. Even though all three of you are more than a mock to any human. Nox coughed sharply, oh right. She added, we will meet in this training ground at 7 tomorrow morning. I'll double your training if you're late, Athena warned. As she prepared a curved knife, Nox sent over her communications, saying, I'm going to skin that cat. Oh shish. You had better locate that poor thing first, Megumi. Megumi began searching frantically from above, spreading her white wings with brown trim on the edges, as Athena sent the message. There, she thought, diving down to capture the animal and putting it to sleep by infusing it with a small amount of her soothing aura. Perish. It had taken Naruto some time to figure it out, but Nox's powerful blood on both sides allowed her markings to change depending on her mood. Normally, they were mostly red with one completely blue one, but if Nox was irritated, it would show nearly pure demon with only a sliver of blue here and there. Nox shouted as she appeared over the rooftop and dove down towards Megumi, her eyes glowing a sinister red and her markings almost entirely red. Additionally, an acid-soaked weapon being waved around was a good indicator. Athena said, all right, enough clowning around you three, let's go. As Megumi caressed Tora delicately and it purred loudly around snores, Naruto dove out of the sky, his wings revealing that the upper half of both were black, the lower half were white, and like Megumi, the edges had a trim the same color as his hair. He rammed into Nox and sent roughly 30,000 volts straight into her nervous system, causing her first spasm to throw him off so hard that he left an indent in a nearby stone wall. Nox smirked when he saw Athena's halberd. It seems that she and Ares had wagered during their most recent fight, and after losing, Athena was prohibited from using her usual weapons or armor for the next 50 years, so well, 43 years now, unless she was engaged in combat with a god of equal strength. About 5 minutes after the Fire Lord's wife had retrieved her cat, Sarutobi remarked, okay, that's a good job all of you. Next on the list of D ranks are either walking the Inazaka hounds and cleaning their kennels or no, I promise there will be casualties on my next D rank. I am a god of war and a demon prince. Allow me to murder someone. To his credit, Hiruzen didn't recoil when she yelled directly in his face. In an even tone, Sarutobi said, Noxario's demonies, You know as well as I do that every immortal here is under at least the guise of being hidden for legal reasons. As such you have to go through at least a token amount of D-rank missions. He even blew smoke from his pipe directly into Nox's face. Hey, old man, I'm going to kill someone today, no matter what. It could be a dozen or so people from your precious village or someone on a higher level mission. What is it? Nox grabbed Hiruzen by the beard and pulled him down until they were looking at each other. All right, I'll give you this one since you seem so eager. I think it might be a Class A mission with a high chance of running into enemy ninja, even though it's listed as a rank C. Hiruzen said, from my intelligence reports, the individual in question cannot afford a proper rank payment because he is in violation of a local crime lord who is probably using a private army. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll pass the mission to some other team. Nox quickly disappeared, whistling casually from behind Athena, who rolled her eyes at these antics. Send in Tazuna, he said into a speaker, using the customary high Hokage. Sama. What? Are these bodyguards for me? A brat with a snot nose and 3 girls. Better protection from a bunch of idiots. The fat man who smelled of alcohol objected as soon as he entered, but then he discovered 2 spiked chains inserted into the wall, each with a spike just an inch from his throat. Am I allowed to murder him? Before Athena violently pulled on her collar and swiftly cut the chains, Nox asked in a composed tone, but her tattoos were flashing, indicating that she was becoming homicidal. Nox. The person we are attempting to protect must not be killed by you, crossly, Athena said. Oh, give me a break. It's been far too long since I killed anyone, I have to kill someone here, Nox objected. Athena pointed to Nox and said, you'll get plenty of chances on the road, young lady. Now Mr. Tazuna, it's best that we leave as soon as possible before our friend here takes a serious attempt at killing you. Tazuna nodded foolishly, and soon they were driving, with Nox occasionally glancing at her and then testing a new blade she had taken from somewhere. Her grin suddenly turned downright feral, giving Tazuna the chills, and while he was observing her, he missed 2 puddles and saw all 3 of his protection members tensing up for battle. According to Tazuna, 2 men appeared out of nowhere, quickly ensnaring Athena in a chain with blades before pulling her violently. His life flashed before his eyes as he watched her become trapped so easily, and when nothing happened, he almost had a heart attack. Just before he was cut in half at the waist, Maizu turned to his right and saw a crazily smiling Nox. Are you boys trying to hurt me or scratch an itch? Athena asked. He couldn't even see her weapon, a double-ended scythe, because it happened so quickly under the arms, then at the neck, then under the nose, and finally through the eyes. Naruto grabbed Guzu by the face and sent enough electricity through his body to make him smell like burnt hot dogs, and Guzu was down in the blink of an eye. Athena simply flexed her muscles and broke the chains calmly, saying, well done you two. Tazuna's mouth fell open. They told him straight out that they had known about Gadu from the beginning after they had jolted him out of his reverie. Nox interrupted him as he attempted to guilt them. Look, wino, I don't too. And that you lied to us. All I know is that going through with this will let me feed my bloodlust, which is a good thing. A very good thing. Alright? I won't be protecting you. I'll be killing Gadu's men for fun and profit, well maybe not profit. And Megumi dropped the ing censorship aura already. Nox said with a smirk, and Megumi. She protested, not until you stop cursing so much, and Nox snarled. With Tazuna flanked by Nox and Megumi, Athena took the rear guard position and gave the order, alright, break it up you two, let's keep moving. Nox, I want your psycho self at point. Everything went according to plan, including a peaceful boat ride through misty conditions, until everyone but Tazuna glanced sharply to the left and then right before a massive sword swung toward them. Athena threw Tazuna to the ground as Athena, Naruto, and Megumi casually ducked beneath it, but Nox went ahead and caught the enormous freaking sword and gave it a few experimental swings. Well balanced, masterfully forged, oiled in the blood of thousands, roughly 200 pounds of blood-drenched metal. I think I need new underwear, she was panting slightly. A voice said, okay girlie, put down the sword really nice and we'll all forget that last bit. A man emerged from the bushes, half of his face covered and without a shirt. For his part, Zabuza was a little unsteady. Not only did his target see him right away and follow his movements, but a young girl also caught his sword before he could. Then she examined it in what appeared to be an orgasm. Yes, he didn't want his sword handled by such a crazy girl. Completely blank. You might chuckle. Nox exclaimed, no, this blade's going right into my collection, as she inhaled the metal's sweet scent and visualized battles from the past. A little disgusted, Naruto remarked, she's scaring me. All war gods have some sort of quirk. Usually most of us can't turn down a challenge, but Nox can't turn down a good weapon. Especially if it has a bloody history. Athena spoke slowly. Zabuza was stalking forward, but everyone else backed up and jumped when he pounced at her. Now everyone, back up nice and slowly, make no sudden movements, she said. She was holding on by the hole in the blade near the tip when Zabuza yelled, "Give me my sword, you little." He had it by the handle, and he was on the verge of losing his hold when one of his words came out as a beep. Nox shouted, drawing back with strength equal to Zabuza's, while Tazuna watched in wonder, Athena in frustration, Naruto in a state of shock and disbelief. What happened to herself? Respect. And Megumi simply sighed. It's mine now, mine, my precious Bloody Marie. Just before Nox began spinning the sword, giving him the ride of his life, he yelled, "Bloody Mary. You little freak, this is the Kabikari Haucho. Let go of me, Headlopper." The world around him shrank to a blur, and then he suddenly lost his grip and flew. He cursed once more, startled by the beep, "You little," before he disappeared. "Oh, this little sweatheart's gonna be put to good use. Yep, exclaimed Nox. With a huge shit-eating grin and a flourish, she placed the large sword across her back and turned to face them. Surprisingly, her left markings turned completely blue, indicating that she was incredibly happy. Implying that a demonic war god is comparatively innocuous, that is, only mildly insane. As Nox absently fiddled with her long wavy hair and hummed softly, Athena snapped everyone out of their reverie with the words, "Alright Athena Tazuna, can you lead the way?" With Nox, like that she won't hurt you, and any bandit or nin in our way will just end up a smear on her new toy. They arrived there comparatively unscathed. Nox skipping there was the only thing that could be deemed an incident. Yes, Naruto was wondering if his grandmother was currently snowboarding or skiing. Possibly engaging in a snowball battle with some demons. For Nox to behave in this way, hell must have frozen over. When Tazuna's daughter Tsunami saw Nox, she almost had a heart attack, but they arrived in time. As Nox practiced swinging Bloody Marie around one-handed like a katana, things had gone pretty well. While Megumi assisted around the house and Athena dedicated herself to personally protecting Tazuna, Naruto entertained himself by creating a number of flaming birds and then sniping them with electric arrows. At the bridge, she also performed some heavy lifting that left many employees speechless as she casually raised several tons of steel girders and tubing, single-handed. Zabuza yelled, "Give me my sword," in an attempt to regain his blade and blindside Nox, who danced off. She would much rather be dropped naked on Bast's lap than give a weapon like Bloody Marie to a mere mortal, even though the euphoria is long gone. She made no effort to engage in any mocking antics. She drop-kicked him so forcefully that he plowed through a tree and was instantly knocked out in a blur of unfathomable speed. With a quick burst of divine energy, she batted a couple of ice chunks back where they had come from. Nox swung the blade onto her back and left, saying, Is that it? I was expecting something more from a person who bathed this sword in so much blood. I guess he only attacked those much weaker than him. Ah well, can't get it all it seems. Now I to wonder where that midget's army is so I can start the bloodbath." As Megumi strolled around the town, she remarked, "This is terrible, the bounties of the sea are so close but the people are starving because of one man's greed." A small child gave her a gap-toothed smile and held out her hands as she felt a tug on her dress. She pulled an apple out of a pouch she carried with her and said, "Here you are, little one, don't eat too fast or you may choke." She said, "Thank you, pretty lady," and Megumi grinned and ruffled her hair. The young girl did exactly that when she said, "You're welcome. Run along now." Determined, she found a small, empty lot with sparse grass and said, "Perhaps I can help." She took a handful of seeds from her bottomless pouch and threw them into the air, using her power to guide them, saying, "Perfect." After giving a nod, she started singing a wordless tune that was brimming with vitality. An elderly woman who had been critically ill recovered. The grass grew lush and thick, and the seeds sprouted and grew into enormous, tall apple trees. Large and ripe, the fruit was ready to drop from the branches. As she walked through her little orchard, she said, "There, that should help the people." She was unaware that the little girl from earlier had witnessed the entire event. Before rushing off to tell everyone, she exclaimed, "Wow." Before he eventually saw Gato, Naruto was scuttling in and out of fireplaces. Then, smirking, he stalked through the men's fortress using a heat mirage, wondering what would happen to the mercenaries if he told Nox about this location. When he discovered Gato's vault, he smiled and said, "Jackpot." He began working on the large safe, swiftly tasering the guards who heard him. After 20 seconds, it opened, and he blew a sharp whistle. He remarked, "That's a lot of paper." Then he had a cunning idea and threw in a fireball. "Woo-hoo! Look at it burn." He laughed as he saw nearly half of Gato's wealth burn away. "My work here is done," he said nonchalantly as he walked into the fire and disappeared. grabbing what appeared to be an extremely expensive bottle of whiskey. Only to reappearance in front of Tsunami from the gas stove, frightening the ever-loving shit out of the poor woman. Naruto was grinning regretfully and said, "Sorry. I was just giving Gadu a hard time." He smiled and held up the whiskey bottle, saying, "Oh, by the way, is your pops in? I picked up something from Gadu's vault he'll like." The following morning, Tazuna remarked, "A red sun rises. Blood has been spilled last night." The man was extremely superstitious. "Whoever crossed Gadu this time, I feel sorry for them." Nox yawned a little and said, "Oh, that was me. I was bored, so I spent some time killing Gadu's men for fun." It said volumes that her shirt had some dried blood on it. But when Inari decided to lose her temper, she arched an eyebrow. With a sly smile, she opened the door behind the child. "You're one whiny as hell mortal, aren't you?" she said. He yelled at her, "What would you know? Like some freak like you knows what it means to suffer." And then he was off the ground, leaning against a wall, and gazing at a young woman who was furious. Her eyes were bright red, and she had the appearance of a tall, powerful man with the same markings and clothing over hers. Her voice had changed, and now everything she said was echoed by a young man's voice. "What do I know about suffering? You little shit. I have suffered greatly in my 800 years of life. Not only has my form been perverted and twisted, not only has my power been stolen from me, I have been in more battles than you've had breaths and been impaled, burned, electrocuted, slashed, shot, and all other sorts of horrific things that would kill you in an instant. Yet despite all that, the one thing that hurt me the most, the one thing in my life I truly regret having happened, is irrevocable, and I am being blamed for it. Before I was forced from my natural gender, I was going to be a father, I was going to have a daughter, but somewhere decided to take that from me. Now the woman who would have been the mother of my child despises me to the core of her being. A person that I loved, that I still love, hates me with such a passion that the last time I saw her over a full century ago, before your great-grandfather was a twinkle in your ancestor's eye, she tried to kill me. You think you know pain?" she demanded, dropping him hard. As she left the building, she said, "You know nothing of it." After her, Naruto called, "Hey, where you going?" She growled, then spread her wings and flew off, saying, "To commit genocide." "Congrats, kid. You just pissed off a prince of hell that's also a god of war. Gonna lip off to Lucifer next? Insult Odin for an encore?" Inari responded. Athena commanded, "Naruto, that's enough. I know you're part demonic as well, but I'd say the humans are scared enough as is." He inhaled deeply, spat out some fire, and dove into it. Calmly, she said, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, you three. But me and Maya Genin are very unique among the ninja forces. We are deities in hiding, as it were. Each one of us alone has the power to destroy entire nations. Naruto, being an ascended human, is the youngest amongst us, followed by Nox at 854. Then Megumi at 858. The reason we took this mission from the beginning was because Nox, being in tune with her demonic nature, was becoming stir-crazy and needed to sat her bloodlust. We've known about Gadu from the start, and we're not leaving without at least cutting the hideous little beast in two." With a tone of wonder, Tazuna questioned, If you're gods and demons, then why is it that Gadu's lived this long? Why not just why do things like this happen in the first place? Due to our massive amounts of power, we have to hold either a disguise or hands-off policy, or at least a facsimile of either. In a disguise policy, we have to limit our strength to human levels. In a hands-off policy, we are not even present and at most can empower people to do our work for us. Kami Sama is the penultimate example of the hands-off policy. If we were to drop these rules, then society, the world, perhaps reality itself would shatter like fragile glass. Tazuna and Athena clarified. There was an awkward silence for the rest of the day. Until, of all people, Tazuna eased the tension. To be fair, Tazuna had discovered the whiskey Naruto had brought over and was a little tipsy when he asked Megumi, "So you're really over 800 years old?" Kindly, she replied, "Well, yes. I am." She laughed when he said, "Geez, you don't look a day over 15. How do you do it?" The following day, Naruto was still waspish, and Nox was still nowhere to be found. Therefore, he made the decision to assist at the bridge and finish it today along with Athena and Megumi. When Tazuna discovered all of his employees unconscious or unable to perform any tasks, he demanded, "What happened here? Who did this?" Naruto snorted as a voice said, "Where is that bitch with my sword?" out of the fog. "Persistent piece of work, ain't ya? Not like you could get it from her when she lays claim to something." He was grinning. Naruto sighed and concluded it was time for some preventative action after Zabuza gave him the order, "Haku, I don't want you leaving them alive. These people are going to die this day one way or another. specifically, launching a fireball straight up that was so hot that the fog cleared and 2 employees were sunburned. In order to get a running start at any opponent, he adopted a forward, leaning stance and clenched his fists, which were engulfed in flames. Reading a kunai, Zabuza growled, "Damn punk." With Nox, she had recently finished cleaning herself up after finally getting over her anger and putting about 100 thugs to work for Gadu. Although blood was beautiful to look at, pleasant to smell, and tasty to eat, being covered in it could be a liability in combat. I wonder who's next on the kill list. I hope I haven't gone through all Gadu's forces yet. I still need to kill a bit more. Great vacation though. Now if only I can undo the effects of the potion Erd used on me. For some reason it's resisted just about all Nona. Nox began when he heard a scream. When she saw the brat about to confront 2 samurai, aspiring thugs holding his mother hostage with real swords, she jumped up and spread her wings. Before diving in, she said, "Hun, he's really got a pair on him when his back's to the wall." From Inari's perspective, he was hurrying the 2 thugs when all of a sudden, a fountain of blood appeared as their heads disappeared and Nox, smiling like a loon, emerged behind them. Her facial markings were crystal blue on the right side and bloody red on the left. Thinking, she said, "Hama, oh my god, why not?" she asked herself in her head. She summoned a 4-foot, long, straight, edged longsword and held it out to him, handle first, saying, "Hey brat, stand up straight, there's still a boatload more to do if you want Gadu's goons out of here by sunset." Inari felt strength surge through him as she said, "Grab the blade and take a bit of my power. Rally the people, this is your home, your land, your family. Show these bastards that they will never be welcome here. Get your mother inside first. Then get the people and get them to Gadu's fortress. Gatu is most likely going to bring a small force to the bridge thinking it will be able to kill all the local nin, the idiot. I'll take care of him. His fortress however is going to be in chaos, so if you play it smart by sunset Wade will be completely free." He obeyed and nodded. She hurried to the bridge a moment later. "You!" Zabuza roared, but with electricity dancing through his body and third-degree burns covering his left arm, he would not have been able to rush Nox. After being knocked unconscious, Haku was taken to a patch of lush grass where the bridge workers were caring for her wounds. Megumi was humming to activate her power while keeping an eye on this. Unsheathing the sword and slamming it into the bridge, Nox said, "Megumi, can you heal Zabuza? I want a good fight." "Noxa," Naruto said, glaring at her gently. Nox smiled as Megumi blasted Zabuza with a burst of pure white energy that not only struck but also instantly fixed his clothes and body. "I've had my fill of slaughter for now. Now I want a real fight with a real opponent. Don't worry, I won't get carried away," she said. "So Zabuza, right here, right now a way for you to get your sword back. Beat me in a straight-up fight." Zabuza gave a slight nod before vanishing from public view. He was a moving blur to both Naruto and Megumi, but the war gods Nox and Athena could easily follow him. Zabuza attempted to strike Nox in the head, but she caught his fist. He twisted, adding significant force to his subsequent blow, but she also caught it. The mule kicked him in the back as she spun around over his head with his fists, and Zabuza was on her in an instant. He threw hundreds of punches at her at a speed that was just below the speed of sound, which was impressive even to Nox. She struggled to avoid it all. "Gosh, I truly gave up." She was shocked when he used the punching technique to counter nearly every kick save for the occasional glancing blow after she jumped up and delivered an open palm strike to his chest, kicking him from above at the same speed he had used earlier. As Naruto blew a sharp whistle of praise, she smiled fiercely. Zabuza stated, "You know for a girl you're pretty decent at this," as she ducked multiple blows to her internal organs. If the broken concrete around her foot was any guide, she was trying to break his shins, and he had to leap back. "You're not too bad yourself. Keep it up and you'll get the sword back no matter how this turns out," Nox gasped. She blindsided him by saying, "It's been way too long since I've had a challenge," and then managed to kick him in the side, knocking the wind out of him. He took a deep breath and skidded backwards. Nox smiled as Zabuza remarked, "The only Leaf Taijutsu clan is the Lee family. Just who the hell taught you to fight like that anyways?" "Experience. I've honed my instincts and bloodlust into a razor's edge. I don't have one style. I have hundreds. The fact that your head's still on straight speaks volumes about your ability," she said with a snort. He couldn't possibly have that much experience in his head as a young girl. When they heard applause, everyone who was conscious turned to see that Gatu and roughly 200 men were present. About 100 remained at his base, while the other 150 mysteriously disappeared. Cough, Nox cough. From behind his army, Gatu remarked, "Well, I must say that was amusing. Looks like you were good for something after all, Zabuza." Gatua, what the hell are you doing here? I've got this covered. Zabuza grumbled. The little bastard was despised by him. I have no use for a mercenary that cares more about his blade than what he's bloody well paid to kill, replied Gatu. Nox said, Hey Zabuza, sword's yours. You're gonna need it to massacre these. He then glanced at Megumi, who flushed but maintained a determined expression. As Nox called forth a pair of twin monk hooks, Athena moved forward and threw the sword to Zabuza in one motion. Versatile, quick, and deadly, exactly what they required. As grass grew all over the bridge and tangled up the thug's feet, Megumi went on the defensive as Naruto started to charge his fists with lightning. Naruto said, Threa, as he received about a dozen lightning bolts in each finger. Tua. Athena proceeded to prepare her halberd. Onia. Nox growled, and her weapons began to leak venom. Gatu roared, Kill them all, and the thugs screamed in shock when they saw that they were all bound. In that moment, Naruto unleashed a massive lightning bolt that ripped through 10 men, causing their blood to instantly evaporate in the extreme heat and exploding in a shower of steam, boiled gore. Nox found herself in the center of them in an instant, with 3 throats slit open after one swing and 2 men gutted after another. She hooked the blades together to create a flying guillotine, slicing 6 men in half before leaping into another dense grouping. With ease, Athena was tearing men to pieces with the axe part of her weapon and tearing people to mush with the haft and butt. It was. Zabuza was chopping people in two and lopping off heads as quickly as he could in an attempt to avoid being outdone. Zabuza watched his forces being massacred and said, So, Gatu, you sought to betray me? From behind the immobilized man. Zabuza grinned as Gatu said, Now Zabuza, let's be reasonable here, it was just good business. He cut the man in 2 at the waist and then beheaded him, saying, So is this. Gatu's head fell somewhere in the surrounding waters after he kicked it away. He disappeared in a shunshin after saying, I'm out of my league with these people. I'd better become scarce before the hunters show too. He reappeared a short while later in a mainland forest glade, holding Haku. Eh? He asked, pointing to a heavy object in one of his pockets. He began to laugh as he produced a nugget of the purest gold with a massive diamond set in the middle. Alongside Inari, he was doing something he could hardly believe. He had successfully led a charge on Gatu's compound by going from house to house and amassing a following of 200 villagers, all of whom were armed with homemade weapons. Right now, he and a few neighbors were using stolen weapons to slaughter the last disorganized group of mercenaries. As he shamelessly ducked under a merc's swing and cut his stomach open, he realized that Nox had done something very profound to him. As Nox's markings on his sword formed a symbol of 2 sweeping lines with a pair of thunderbolts between them, Inari said in an authoritative voice, That should be the last of them. Gather the wounded and the dying, there's been enough death today. He calmly walked out after swinging the blade onto his back. He turned to the people he had inspired and spoke the words they had all been waiting for after stabilizing the dying and bandaging the injured. A great cheer broke out as he grinned and said, Gentlemen, wave is free. For a brief moment, he thought he saw his deceased father grinning at him before he faded away when he felt a hand on his shoulder. With the 4 gods occasionally observing, the bridge was finished quickly. A few days later, Athena said, Well, we've imposed on you long enough. It's time for us to head home. Oh, Yuha, our pleasure. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. If there's anything we can ever do for you, just ask. Tazuna replied with a nod. Nox snorted as Inari asked, Uma, are you going to want the sword back? As she went through another spinning kata with the hooks, Nox said nonchalantly, It's yours, kid, just remember to use it right. As she spun around, slicing cleanly through a bunch of fireballs that Naruto threw at her and scattering them, she remarked cheerfully, Can't believe I forgot how much fun these things were. As Nox sheathed both weapons across her back, Naruto questioned, So I guess we better start heading to Konoha. Are we going by air, element, or the old-fashioned way? After saying her goodbyes, Megumi remarked, Most likely walking. We'll attract less attention that way. A brass plaque on both pillars of the bridge itself gave them a small smile. It said, The God's Bridge. In remembrance of those who helped us during our most vulnerable moments. Who gave us the courage to embrace the future and hope for it. May this bridge and our hope endure forever, as evidence of their strength. They had been stuck performing D ranks once more after returning to the village approximately a month ago. In order to circumvent the conditions of her wager with Ares, Athena had started to harass Thor before engaging in a duel. Even though he was thicker than his hammer, Thor was able to see through this and was glad to assist. However, everyone in his large family had persuaded him to change Mjolnir and his form slightly in order to blend in. The once wheelbarrow, Sized hammer, which still weighed 2 tons and was a vicious piece of work, was now hanging off his belt. He had gained notoriety for donning a blue t-shirt that read, "Lightning? Fuck yay," in ragged yellow on the front. He truly looked good as he walked around in casual jeans and sneakers, his beard slightly cropped and his hair brushed back a little. Civilized now. His accent had also been dropped. In any case, he was not very good at pretending. With his now feisty and outspoken girlfriend Hinata, Naruto had returned to his favorite pastime of giving Hiyashi a heart attack. Before she began dressing in Anko inspired attire, he hadn't given a damn, but hey, it's better late than never, Hiyashi. At the moment, Megumi was content with their D rank. In fact, she contributed to the community and enjoyed many of them. At the moment, they were walking about a dozen unpartnered Inazaka dogs. They were strolling through a park slowly and peacefully when Megumi, now in tiny chibi form, sat on the head of the big lead dog. Athena was idly walking in front of Naruto, who was dozing off on its back behind her. At the moment, Nox was sulking and following the pack while silently cursing because she had stepped right in one of the dog's poop, which was somehow able to take a dump without stopping because it was partially cow. Megumi's eyes glistened as Sasuke's voice called out, "Hey Megumi. You around?" It was surprising how well they clicked. Sasuke was legally sane after almost 2 years of 4-hour therapy sessions masquerading as passing notes 5 days a week, which had been sparked by her desire to heal others. He had a monster of a crush on her by now, of course, but hey, Belldandy wasn't protesting because he treated her fairly. In contrast, Keiichi, he was a bit defensive. A few months prior to his date with Megumi, Naruto had slicked his hair back, think Virgil from DMC, but with black hair, and she blushed shyly at this new look. This is why he had dropped the duck ass hairstyle. Okay. He simply kept doing it over. In addition, he wore a black trenchcoat with the Uchiha crest prominently displayed on the back and dark cargo pants. Taking her normal size, Megumi called back, "Over here," nearly flattening the dog and sending Naruto flying a few meters. Megumi said, "Oh goodness, I'm so sorry," as she retreated from the dog, which was now observing her. Naruto thought, looks like she doesn't totally take after her mom. He got up and went back to his normal self. Athena said, "All right dogs back here in 15 got it," and all of the animals dipped their heads before running away in a loud barking horde. Nox muttered, "Stupid, annoying piece of," as she used a summoned senbon to wipe her sandal clean. Megumi had hurried up to Sasuke during this time, and they were cuddling. Sasuke asked smoothly, "So Megumi, I was wondering if you'd let me escort you around the Kyuubi festival tonight?" Megumi blushed a little and then nodded. With a growl, Naruto observed, "That's a pretty decent idea duckass. I should take Hina-chan out tonight myself," he thought. Athena said, "Okay kids, we have to finish this up," as Nox was finishing to remove the debris from her sandal. After finally resolving her transformation issues just before the mission, Nox thought to herself, "I need to talk to Grandma. This has gone too far for too long." She also discovered that Hilde's energy was the primary catalyst to keep a previous 24-hour transformation on permanently and was stabilizing the chaos magic that he had inadvertently used all those years ago, preventing her from aging at advanced rates and reforming into a him. In addition, it was interfering with her abilities by simultaneously functioning as a resistor and a scatterer. Why was the only question? What could his grandmother possibly be trying to accomplish with this? Unless she had taken a more drastic turn toward the sadistic than usual, she had nothing to gain and very little entertainment. But when she did that, she was rarely subtle. What the heck? Why employ so many opposing energy lines from a list of immortals who have a connection to her or chaos magic? And what on earth was the purpose? Fortunately, Nox had just sensed her energy, not a particularly tough task, mind you, so she would question her shortly. 30 minutes later in the office of the Hokage, Nox was already gone, waiting for a response when Sarutobi said, "Very good team immortal, your pay has been deposited into your accounts. That will be all for today." Naruto said aloud, "What's her rush? Think it's her time of the month?" But Athena gave him a glare and struck him in the head, before leaping into it like a tear through space as it burned out around him and disappeared in a plume of smoke. He said, "Sorry." He then whipped his hand through the air to create a tiny plume of fire. Athena sniffed as she and Megumi strolled out at a leisurely pace, saying, "Little show off." The day of Naruto Hyuga compound. After putting his arms around his girlfriend, Naruto said, "Hey cutie pie, how are we today?" She had only been subjected to Erd's anti-inhabitation potion once. Reopening that crack in her shell of shyness only required about a month of persuasion. He didn't require an anti-inhabitation potion after that, and he did a lot of wrenching on that symbolic crack. Not at all now. As he held her from behind, Hinata responded, "Fairly good, handsome." She ground her hips into him a little. She was dressed in sandals, short shorts, and a form-fitting tank top. In actuality, though, she was only bare from the neck up because she had useful full-body mesh close to her body. Her older sister, Anko, had also taught her a lot about interrogation and intimidation. An interrogator apparently benefited from using the Byakugan to track a subject's heart rate. Nobody could deceive her, and it was a terrible form of intimidation to gradually reduce their tenketsu points. She was able to bring them back from the brink of death by learning medical jutsu and going all out. She turned slightly, and they kissed deeply. When Naruto sensed that Hiyashi was trying to kill him, he broke off with a smirk. Naruto hinted, and Hinata smiled at him as Hiyashi growled close by. "So gorgeous, it's the Foxes' festival tonight and I was thinking they could use more foxy women out there." An old voice yelled, "You demon child," from close by, and Naruto froze, his power starting to flare. Naruto growled as the Hyuga elder yelled, "Get away from the lady Hinata. I'll take care of the old bat Naruto-kun. If you cripple one again they're going to raise another stink and we'll have to go through a break out of this joint with pursuit and a harrowing romp through the village." "Actually that does sound a bit like fun," Hinata said. Before directing a tiny amount of flame at the Hyuga elder's foot, causing it to catch fire and culminating in an amusing dance, Naruto remarked, "Doesn't it? Hotfoot." Hinata chuckled at what she saw. "So what sort of outfit should I whisk you away in the night in? Pirate style? Rogue? Gallant knight? Romantic?" asked Naruto. As they began to leave the compound together, Hinata said, "I would love to see you pull off the man in metal outfit. Going to bring a horse?" As they began their journey towards the commercial district, Naruto pondered, "Maybe. I was just wondering if I should put armor on it as well. And whether or not a cape is appropriate." Hinata said slyly, "Oh surprise me Naruto-kun." He smiled. He traced a circle around her ear in the small of her back and said, "I'll take that as a challenge." She shivered in response. He casually stole a pouch full of cash and asked her, "But for now what do you want to do first?" With a finger on her chin, Hinata remarked, "Perhaps something a little sweet, then something salty before hitting the dance area." Naruto demonstrated that had indeed reared him by saying, "Sounds good, I just swiped our dinner pay so let's find us some tasty booths then try out each other's snacks." 20 minutes or so later, while Hinata finished some dango, Naruto was contentedly munching on a bag of barbecue chips when he smirked. She nodded while still holding half a mouthful of dango in her mouth when Naruto asked, "So you wanted something salty too, Hina-chan?" He kissed her with his open mouth and they swished their tongues together, tasting each other's snack. With her eyes half closed, Hinata questioned, "Tasty, but was it the chips, the dango, or was it you Naruto-kun?" Naruto calmly escorted her to an area where a few couples were already dancing and remarked, "I say it was me but who really knows?" It was a short note that read, "Something nice and slow please," with a 50 ryo bill attached. He casually flicked a kunai with a note tied to the end so that it impaled the wooden pillar near the DJ, who jumped away, expecting it to be a classic explosive note. When the current song ended, the man smiled, adjusted his shades, and put on a slow love song remix. He watched the 20-something couples dance slowly and intently, but he had no idea who had thrown the knife. Hey, he got easy money, a free knife, and nobody was complaining. Why would he, then? The day of Megumi after bidding Athena farewell and pledging to begin weapon training of some kind. With a little bounce in her step, she hurried home, pausing only to peek at a few stores' displays. As she was doing this, she was also considering what kind of weapon she would learn to wield. Quarterstaff came to mind. It was useful for defense, and she could easily trip someone and tie them up with the grass if she had to hit them, ending the altercation with only minor bruises. Excellent, the issue has been resolved. Belldandy said, "Good afternoon, Megumi-chan," in a pleasant tone. "Enjoy your mission today?" "I did. We helped the Inazaka hounds who are waiting for a partner to get some exercise and see the sights around Konoha. I don't know why Naruto and Nox don't like D-rank missions all that much. They're pleasant and often a literal walk in the park." Megumi was somewhat perplexed. Well, some people need to learn to relax and enjoy life as it comes. They often forget how to simply slow down. It's not something to pity though, and it needs no healing. They simply learn to love a faster pace of life, although it is good to be there for when they run out of energy and are about to crash. Megumi nodded in agreement. Keiichi, who had just left his job at the power plant, said as he entered the yard, "So, you're still dating the emo boy?" With patience, Megumi stated, "He's not an emo father." Megumi sighed as he calmly said, "Look, I'm not trying to pry. I just want you safe and happy." Megumi pouted a little as she said, "But according to you, no one's good enough for me." Your standards are too high. I'd have to date a god to meet half the requirements. At the glance Belldandy was giving him, Keiichi trailed off. Now honey, I just want a. He let out a sigh. I'm sorry, I just worry about you. You were my little girl for 800 years and in less than a decade you've decided to grow up. I just want to make sure it's for the right reasons. Keiichi responded. Belldandy gave him a wistful peck on the cheek and said, Oh Keiichi. He held her close even though he blushed a little. You always find new ways to show that sweet gentle side of yours, even after so many millennia. Megumi sighed as her parents, who had been together for a very long time, fell in love again. She wanted that kind of love, the kind where it was enough to be with them. Where you could carry a small piece of perfection with you everywhere you went. When you looked your loved one in the eyes, that was the ideal moment. She was working with Sasuke to create that. In order to quickly change and meet him, she left her parents to their bliss. She hurried through her room and only emerged wearing a knee-length pleated skirt in chestnut brown and an olive green jacket. She finished off her appearance with a white bow in her hair, sandals, and minimal makeup. It was modest enough to be worn casually around town but tight enough to flaunt her well-defined figure. Before leaving for Sasuke's aura, she said simply to her parents, I'll be back before my curfew. She found him in less than 10 seconds. She said softly, Hello Sasuke, I'm ready. He blushed, a little annoyed that she had taken him by surprise. Once more, she did that pretty well. She never boasted about it or frightened him, but she consistently managed to pull it off, leaving him to wonder how. Hello Megumi. Where would you like to go first? From what I saw of the festival earlier there are all sorts of games and such as well as a dance in the square. We have all the time we need, Sasuke replied. Megumi stood close to him and grinned contentedly, saying, Let's just wander for a while. She found herself feeling the same way about him even though it wasn't what her parents had yet. Her mere presence warmed him from the inside out, and he returned her smile. They just wandered, as she suggested, with no true purpose or objective. After rewarding Sasuke with a kiss on the cheek, they stopped casually at a throwing game that they knew was rigged. They had no problem just plodding down and smashing his stack of bottles, giving Megumi a big stuffed bear that she tucked into her pocket and sealed in a hastily scrawled storage scroll. Following the DJ diving for cover, they eventually found their way into the square where the dance was taking place and arrived just in time to hear a slow tune begin to play. Naruto, Megumi cursed inwardly, choosing not to mention it. Even so, it only took a gentle prod to join in on the dance floor. In addition to being lengthy and slow, the dance gave Sasuke and Megumi an unforgettable evening. Hilde and Nox's conversation. She had been pursuing Hilde for almost an hour. It was simple to identify the building and even the room she was in, but it was difficult to time it so she wouldn't run into her own mother and grandmother, as well as dozens of her drinking friends from 50 years ago, naked from a game of strip poker. Even though Hilde was only wearing a sheet that Nox had to persuade her to use to cover her modesty, she invited Nox to sit on her lap and asked, So what can I do for you, sweetheart? Despite the fact that the entity in front of her was infinitely more powerful, even with dozens of power limiters reducing her to a fraction of her actual power, Nox asked, her eyes turning red. Why? Still a lot more, but much less. Hilde was unsure of whether to be serious or not, but Nox could tell right away from the sparkle in her eyes that she knew exactly what she was talking about. All right then, I'll give it to you plain and simple. Nox thought, wow, there must be a catch. Hilde confirmed, oh there is. Nox grimaced, forgetting that, in addition to Kami's infinitely high power level, Hilde possessed thousands of different powers. Hilde said in a playful manner, you see, the knots that hold you in place are made in such a way that even I cannot undo them. Only you can now, and that's only if you find perfect balance, even for an instant. Meaning that for one instant you must act both like a war god, and also like a powerful demon prince. Despite your claims as a demon of poison, if you do this you go back to normal. Hilde then returned to the poker room to make the situation even more sultry. Nox swore, flung a kunai to the ground, and stepped into it to reappear in her room. Aw fuck it, great, so somehow I have to act like a god and a demon at the same fucking time. Son of a cunt, Nox yelled. Language, exclaimed a scandalized Keiichi, who was clearly covering his wife's ears. Nox simply snarled, sat down on her bed, and used her strength to knock herself out, completely incensed at the demands to get back to normal. I've made the decision to include the first few sections of the chunin exam while things are still going well because you've all been waiting so long. Especially now that I've gotten past that obstacle. As promised, Naruto had been seen carrying Hinata away from Hyuga pursuers to do Kami knows what away from prying eyes in full burnished plate mail, complete with a white cloak and tabard, a few weeks after the Kubi festival. Hilde knows, too, which could account for her recent smile. Megumi was feeding a small flock of birds that had been drawn to her presence and were now accepting handouts from the young woman when Naruto remarked, 50 Ryo says we've been signed up for the chunin exams. Athena's never late. They were lounging around a bridge. Just to see the look on her face, Nox was thinking about spearing a few and having Naruto roast them. Even though she could visualize it. Although it had taken some time, Nox had discovered all of the requirements. 1. To engage in combat with a formidable foe who possesses a blade of equal strength to Nox's summoning and poisoning abilities. 2. It was necessary to fight for both protection and the excitement of the battle. 3. The situation should be found rather than forced or manipulated. It is acceptable to pursue a well-known swordsman, but it is unacceptable to bribe a demon to attack someone and then immediately defend them. 4. In order to win a battle decisively, one must be both honorable and cunning. Those 4 requirements, which were not as severe as she had feared but were still quite demanding, had to be met simultaneously. For those who tainted the world for their own benefit, it eliminated the need for a demon prince whose circle of hell was a ring of sharp spires and toxic smoke. Although they are generally slow and fat, they make excellent training targets because they pick things up quickly, making them difficult to hit and providing incredibly satisfying screams. Thus, the sheer strength and fury of a god of war had to be combined with the cunning of a poison master. Normally, they don't get along well because honorable and cunning are frequently used interchangeably, particularly in combat. Naruto held up a wad of cash and said, "Hoi, Nox, you in this or out?" Nox gave Megumi a sidelong glance after saying, "No way, I wouldn't bet the hairs on my." He had essentially given up on persuading her to remove the censorship. Naruto looked at Megumi and asked, "Do you even have hairs on your?" But she blatantly ignored them. The controversy. Holding a small bundle of papers, Athena observed from next to Megumi, "Still have the censorship aura up, I see." Naruto held out a hand to Nox and boasted, "Ha, I win, pay up. You're about a millennia too late if you want to catch me like that. Why would you want hairs off my anyways?" asked Nox. Naruto objected, saying, "What, we bet 50 Ryo apiece." Nox yelled, "You lying." "I did not?" the brunette sighed as Athena asked, "Megumi?" Nox said she wouldn't bet the hairs on her rear. "Naruto?" inquired Athena. "Spirit of chaos, remember?" he groaned in response. Athena handed out the papers, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. "Anyway, I've signed the 3 of you up for the chunin exams mostly because 2 of you just don't have the humility to pretend to be mere genin," he asked, coming from the woman disguised as a jonin. To which Nox snorted and Athena gave a slight growl. She gave Nox and Naruto a sharp look as they gave each other huge fake yawns in unison, then looked at one another and sighed. "I'd say congratulations and all that, but really, this is because I'm getting really sick of babysitting you two." "Alright, knock it off you two. I get it. You don't care. Damn hybrids, can't any of your kind ever just fit into one group?" "Oh, I dunno, I'd say Megumi fits the whole god stereotype fairly well," said Naruto. "Alright, this thing Issa today, right? Okay, cakewalk, let's do this so I don't have to see Whiskers or Little Miss Saint there every day," Nox said. Naruto retorted, "I'll be glad to get rid of you myself." Megumi asked Athena, "Isn't it nice the way they play together?" Athena looked at her and sighed before shaking her head. "Anyways, if you 3 go through with this, you'll still be a team, but you won't have me, so I'll be in Anbu," explained Athena. She said, "Now you 3 have an exam to attend to and I have some paperwork to fill." Then, because of the bridge's stone construction, she vanished in an instant. As he remarked, "Hun, first part's in the academy. Let's go." Naruto pose. Nox was flipped off when he asked, "Do you always have to act like a dork?" Nox asked rather politely, "You losers can walk. Megumi, could you send me a mental sign for when you've arrived so I can teleport in?" And Megumi cheerfully replied. As he and Megumi left, Naruto yelled, "Fine, stay behind, loser." Nox got burned this time. A block away from the redhead, Naruto yelled in exasperation, "I just don't know what her problem is. I mean, I know some people are jerks, but Nox never freaking lets up. It's because she's a she. Nox isn't comfortable the way she is and has always hated being treated like a child. What she's going through is comparable to water torture. It doesn't create any physical harm, but it still leaves very deep gashes in a person. Not to mention Nox was hurt from within to begin with. This is a very roundabout method, but Lady Hilde is trying to force a reaction. A large reaction so that Nox will force herself or himself or whichever to move past all of this. Especially since simply letting the problem sit didn't help." Megumi clarified and Naruto found himself staring at raising his eyebrows. "What?" she inquired. Megumi shrugged and smiled before turning to face the sun, clearly ignoring Naruto's question. I don't get it, one moment you're all ditzy and airheaded, the next you're a pro psychologist and can explain everything perfectly. What gives? Naruto asked. A voice shouted from nearby, let's go, and Naruto let out a sigh. When they turned the corner to the alley where they heard the shouting, he said, okay, let's see what the pest's gotten into. Before releasing his hold and lowering the child, he casually wrapped his arm around the shoulders of the man lifting Konohamaru off the ground. Naruto remarked nonchalantly, you know there's this little something called the law that says you can't do that here. The man tried to free himself from Naruto's hold right away, but he was equally swiftly placed in a crushing headlock that caused his eyes to swell. Then he saw something. And if I see you roughing up a kid again, then I'll sick a in God of vengeance on your. Drop the aura Megumi, he yelled. He dropped the puppet and gave the real Kankuro a hard slap on the head, saying, clever. But you're all tied up and I've got this fun little toy called a knife on me. I know you're here for the chunin exams, but why spark an international incident? I mean, do you want to fall down some stairs and land on a blade? A swift snap kick ended Kankuro's attempt to have his puppet loosen Naruto's hold on the more crucial portions of the wrapping that were holding him confined. Naruto did not even turn around. Without pausing, Naruto said nonchalantly to both Gaara and Kankuro, try to play nice here. You two tanuki. Boy. Gaara started, Kankuro, you're an embarrassment. Naruto said sharply, yay, like a demon container that gets controlled by his own demon. Gaara then unleashed a gut-wrenching, bowel-loosening amount of killing intent that was augmented by Shukaku's. With a yawn, Naruto struck him with the deadly intent of a true demon, knocking him to his knees. Tamari then just collapsed, and a wet spot appeared in the bundle. Konohamaru and his group had long since departed. Keiichi, dressed in a shunshin, slapped Naruto on the head and said, knock it off, kid. By concentrating his energy into his left hand, he struck Gaara squarely in the abs, changing the feeble seal that held the sand spirit within him. This way, by the end of the day, Gaara would be assuming the role of the One Tail. He didn't know it anyhow. He said sharply, now all of you get. You have an exam to attend. Megumi and Naruto both ran off, with his daughter waving at him. They passed a small group of people standing in front of a door with weak genjutsu, and Megumi said softly, don't say anything, Naruto. Before the temptation got the better of him, she had to march him right past while holding onto the back of his neck. Chaos Spirits' eye. With a disappointed sigh, Naruto withdrew a kunai and flicked it, causing Nox to emerge outside of it and proceed to walk alongside them while holding something in her mouth, likely spicy. They entered casually after she gave them a nod. After a few seconds, Sasuke and Megumi were standing chastely and closely together, while Hinata and Naruto were well. It was provocative. Nox was relieved to see Ryu with Sakura. It appeared that the favor she had requested had been granted. Do you miss your partner? As soon as he saw that Nox was staring at them, Naruto sent a mental snarl back to her. Nox came back with so much venom that Naruto shuddered. If you don't stop talking, I'll geld you with a hammer. What is it? A slack-jawed voice asked from close by, and Team Immortal turned to see a 17-year-old with silver hair starting a conversation with Shikimaru. Nox inhaled deeply through her nose in gratitude. Ah, betrayal. Nox thought, what a delightful sin. Megumi and Naruto both became much more cautious. But Nox understood that a spy would not be by himself. If those 3 from the sand are here with silver, then 5 will get you 20. The 3 from sound and the grass trio over there. If I understand their auras correctly, they are all in collusion. What, are you certain? Naruto's ability to sense auras is still a work in progress. Megumi responded, yes, I can sense it as well, and Nox nodded. I detest being excluded. Nox blinked and gave the girl a look when Megumi, of all people, blew him the mental equivalent of a raspberry. Naruto sent the message. What the devil? Megumi apologized by saying, sorry, it's a very strong grass one, Megumi said glumly. At best, our power limiters put us in close proximity to Junin, but he's past that. Dibs, Nox decided to take advantage of the situation. What? Naruto. Nox said, I just called dibs. On what? Megumi solo combat with the snake. Give it a go. You see, I succeeded once more. That's not something you can call dibs on, Naruto. Yes, I can. Give it a go. You see? Why? As you are now, he will tear you to pieces. Naruto. Nox sent with such force that they both blanched physically. Just let me do this. Wasn't the timing a little off when one of the sound genin slammed Kabuto? Kabuto vomited from the force of the blow after being slammed into the wall. As Hinata turned to face Naruto, Sasuke asked Megumi, what's wrong? Naruto responded on their behalf. Megumi gave Naruto a sidelong glance as he said, that attack didn't physically connect. He used sound waves to hit under the skin. He probably has some kind of long-range defense as well. Fighting them ought to be fun. That's enough, you maggots. I don't want to see any fighting until I say so. The first part of the chunin exam has begun, and if you punks don't settle down I'll murder you myself. This would normally be a fairly minor threat to any ninja, but when it's delivered by a man wearing an awesome trenchcoat. What? I like trenchcoats. With massive scars and a death glare that conveys killer intent as if he intended to torture and maim every last one of them and relish every moment of it, it tends attention. What the fuck? An exam in writing. Nox started giggling at Megumi's scandalized thought process after Naruto sent the mental link. It's a test of character. These are used by various militaries. All you need to do is respond to a question, correctly or incorrectly. They put you to the test in an unwinnable situation because you need self-confidence and determination. Nox sent with the mental equivalent of a smile. As she effortlessly navigated through the cipher, Megumi thought, we're gods, we can just access the divine, abyssal, or spiritual supercomputers and get the right answers anyway. Her gift of tongues allowed her to quickly and precisely translate the language. For those who are curious, Thor is a good example of how the gift of tongues enables all immortals to speak any language without an accent, though some will add a fake one for amusement. After Megumi had browbeaten both Naruto and Nox into not making any noise at all, the three immortals promptly resolved the issues. After what Naruto thought was an interminably dull period of time, Ibiki started, now as to the 10th question. He sat up with a smile. It is your choice as to whether or not to take this question, however those not taking automatically fail, he said. One of the genins stood up and yelled, then why the hell wouldn't we take it? Ibiki yelled, sit down, with enough deadly intent to make a normal genin sweat. The blonde girl from Suna got to her feet as he grimly said, if you get this final question wrong, then the remainder of your time as a shinobi will be as a genin regardless of prior or future performance. She yelled, that's bullshit. No way you have that kind of authority, and he produced scroll after scroll, each one bearing the official markings of the participating villages. He said grimly, and many genin gulped as he said, normally you would be right little girl, but I have gotten the approval of all the leaders of each hidden village, cage or otherwise. You simply have had the bad luck of facing me. A tense silence fell until a genin said, I give up. Sorry guys. Then, like a dam-breaking team after team quit, leaving perhaps a fifth of the starting genin. Ibiki glared across the room and said, anyone else? This is your last chance. While some shivered, the others remained unflappable. Everyone blinked for a moment as he solemnly said, then in that case, you all pass the first stage of the chunin exams. Kaabamn. Anko Mitarashi in a huge banner proudly declared that they were the sexy Anko Mitarashi proctor of the second exam when a huge explosion erupted. This was followed by a deep silence. She started to perspire when Ibiki said, Anko, you're early, again. You know if you two would stop staring at your crushes for 10 seconds we can fill out these forms and get our scroll. Nox reminded her fellow players. Don't be jealous, just because you lost Ryu doesn't mean you have to try to ruin our happiness, replied Naruto. First off, go fuck yourself. Nox started, then felt more confident after hearing her own profanity. Second, Megumi started to look at Nox with a shocked and heartbroken expression, and Nox trailed off, your lovers are now our direct opponents, and our best bet is to take one or the other out too. Naruto laughed and said, big bad demon. Both Naruto and Megumi signed their forms and were collected, which led to them receiving an earth scroll. After a few minutes, they stood in front of gate 11 looking bored, but it was only a few more minutes before they were in. Naturally, Nox had to grab them both by the ear and drag them in because Sasuke's and Hinata's teams were on either side. Oh shut up. Nox responded venomously. Nox huffed and turned her head away when Naruto said, alright, now that you slow pokes are in, let's start a strategy. Now we overpower every team by a huge amount, but there are at least 2, if not 3, extremely dangerous individuals here, she said. Nox has graciously offered to deal with one of them directly, and we are aware of who they are. Megumi gasped as Naruto explained, the problem is that Orochimaru has a well-documented fascination with bloodlines and learning jutsu, so Sasuke is probably on his hit list. Alright, then? When Nox asked, Naruto looked at him a little perplexed. Not precisely. More along the lines of someone to protect, I thought. As you try to kill the snake, Megumi and I prevent him from killing anyone. Megumi sighed as Naruto concluded, the problem is that there's a good chance he's going to use clones. Nox. Don't be silent, you are a god of battle, What will happen? Megumi asked, raising an eyebrow in response. I am not a prophet. I am a god of war. Nox responded with enough venom to lay low an entire country. I don't know what's going to happen. What the devils have infiltrated your? Naruto demanded before leaning in closer to Nox, huffing through his nose when he smelled blood. Are you bleeding? Startled by the ironic taste he recognized, he asked. Nox said, her eyes glimmering dangerously, shut up. My goodness. I had no idea the transformation was so thorough, Megumi said. Staring at Nox as though a plant were growing on her head, Naruto yelled, holy shit. Go to hell. With a sly smile, Naruto answered, even though going to see your grandmother can be traumatic at times, that's not much of a curse. How many years have you been going through this? Have you always been a bitch, or are you just a bitch by nature? He asked, and he received a punch that sent him flying. It's none of your business, Nox yelled at him, and then all three of them experienced a surge of energy. Before they could even widen their eyes, 3 bursts of wind sent them all in different directions, destroying their plans. Megumi as it was, she waited until she was close enough to a tree and lightly touched the bark, which caused her to swing around upon it. She landed safely on one of the road's wide branches and panted a little to get her heartbeat under control. She froze as she felt it. Eyes. Horrible yellow eyes. The only thing that stopped her from deploying her wings was a tremendous effort of will. As she made a fruitless attempt to see her tormentor, she heard the words, Kukakuku, reverberating all around her. So the Mokuton has returned to Konoha? Kukakuku, it uttered. Orochimaru, I'm not afraid of you, she retorted, adopting a more relaxed posture as her attire changed from a basic yet stylish sundress to a jacket, dark green tee, shirt, pants, and sneakers. If you know of my power, then you know the moment you reveal yourself you are within my grasp. Really? Well, you are more than I initially thought you were, child, he said directly behind her. She quickly escaped his grasp and descended from above with a staff made of wax wood. The first blow was powerful enough to cause a concussion in a normal man, and the second one was made worse by the wood's recoil. She tensed the wood to her right and let it throw her left in time to avoid 50 snakes biting into and crushing the mud statue, but she was caught by the back of the neck as she flew backwards. The staff stuck quickly as it solidified as hard as stone, and the serpent melted into mud. What mouth-watering reflexes. What I thought you were was a medic nin. But after my own teammate and Kabuto-kun, I suppose it should be far from a surprise. He hissed in her ear while holding her hands tightly against her back, and he was about to bite her when a blinding flash came from the normally gentle girl and an invisible force tore her out of his hands. The wood beneath his feet twisted, and Orochimaru realized he had really pressed his luck when he jumped away from the tree and, still blinded, he heard a huge whooshing noise approaching him. He quickly created a shadow clone and used it to throw himself to the ground, where he activated a stealth jutsu. This was a smart move, as his shadow clone was quickly destroyed. As his eyes widened in shock and a plethora of memories from other clones flooded his mind, he thought, it seems subtlety will be more useful with this girl. These are no genin. These aren't even human. Naruto. What the devil? Naruto exclaimed as he was while in midair no less catapulted by a wind technique into the distance. He turned around in midair and his eyes widened as he made it into a clearing full of giant snakes. Son of a bitch, he yelled, then flipped in midair to avoid a snake that was attempting to grab him. He then used the snake as a launching pad to get away from anyone else who might bite it, sending it flying into the air. He produced an explosion at the soles of his feet to propel himself through the air, grabbed its forked tongue, and swung upwards, causing it to snap with a sickening sound, dispelling that snake. He leapt up again, causing 2 snakes to collide, then let himself fall between the 2 stunned serpents, grabbing their tongues and sending electricity up through them, causing them to jerk and disappear back to their world. The snake wanted to up the game? Well, he would up the game. He jumped down and hit the forest floor before the snakes could react, then let out a huge pulse of power that made them nervous. Before they could gather themselves, a huge lightning bolt tore through the treetops and struck him dead on where it spread out, coating the entire field in electricity and dispelling every summons at once. He frowned at the nest of snakes rising up below him and decided it was time to stop screwing around. All right, where are you, slick bastard? Naruto asked, scanning his surroundings. He wasn't in sight, meaning. Fuck. A pair of arms shot out of the ground for Naruto's ankles as he jumped hard and yelled. Kukakuku. How amusing Naruto-kun is. I'm completely fascinated by your sealless skills. Would you please be my test subject? The earth beneath him erupted and spun into a mud serpent that shot towards Naruto, who smiled, as Orochimaru called his head, extending after Naruto swiftly launched a blast of fire down so hard and fast that both the head and body had to dodge. Orochimaru's neck returned to normal size and he flashed through some hand seals. Stupid. Water is used by mud, and I have lighting. Naruto shouted, launching a lightning bolt into the serpent, causing the lighting to electrify the area around Orochimaru, causing it to dissipate. Naruto touched down, trying to sense his enemies but unable to catch anything. Is he gone? What a clone. Nox. Whore. Stop sucking. She immediately had a pair of hook swords out and ready as Nox screamed, threw a spiked chain into a nearby tree, and swung around to catch himself on a branch. You believe you can use blades to match me? Do you believe you can compete with the Kusanagi? From what I understand, you literally summon blades in the same way that I summon serpents, Orochimaru said, emerging from the shadows with a smile. In addition, your unusual poisons are really fascinating. I'll bet that your teammates have already fallen, so I already have the Mokuton user and the Elementalist. Why not complete the set with the Blade Master? Orochimaru inquired, and Nox charged without warning. Nox had to sigh when the blade shot to him like an arrow that never left his opponent's hand. It was a bad day for her, especially since her period started 10 minutes after that written exam, but she was a god of battle and was literally made for this. She deflected the now ridiculously long blade, which in its current form could only be used on a decapitation attack. In surprise or reverse to conceal the weapon, she charged closer, sliding on her knees, and used the hooks to swing her swords one-handed like a flying guillotine at his knees. The snake jumped, as expected, and she simply let go of the blades in favor of calling forth a Chinese broadsword that was made similarly to the Kusanagi. She was quickly up and engaged in a blade lock. With a somewhat sultry tone that made Nox gag, Orochimaru hissed, "You're fairly strong for your age, girl. I'd imagine that some incredible secrets could be found with you face down on my dissection table. You don't know what you're up against, do you?" Orochimaru's eyes widened as the colors of her tattoos started to shift, merging and dancing but never joining into green. Nox asked, her voice changing slightly as her eyes widened. She changed her stance and, while still in blade lock, released her left hand to conjure a katar, where she attempted to stab Orochimaru with the dripping blade. He jumped away, but his head shot forwards, completely blinding her, biting her in the neck before retracting backwards faster than Nox could counterattack, though she was able to nick him. Kukakuku. Later, I'll deal with you. Nox's eyes widened as her energy started to spark and twist around her. The true prize is the other girl and her dear Uchiha, he said, his voice echoing around her. She had never experienced such pain before, but it tore through her on an emotional level, starting at the left side of her neck where she had been bitten. A seal. How did he manage to get me sealed? On her hands and knees, with the tree bark breaking beneath her and the air sizzling around her, Nox could only scream in pain as the priceless balance between the powers of heaven and hell inside her was shattered and put into conflict. Some of the energies were dark purple, while others were nearly pure silver white. Team 7. Sasuke, Sakura, and Ryu. Ryu was the dead last by 1 point because he was so distracted by something pink after being struck by Aphrodite's love spell on the day of the test. What the devil? They had heard a sword fight and were going to investigate when Ryu asked, a tortured scream coming from nearby. Anyway, we were going to look. When their breath caught in their throats, they hurried to the tops of the trees and looked through some branches. Just keep your heads down, Sasuke said, pocketing the spare heaven scroll they had just taken from a rain team that had attempted to ambush them. Whatever became of her? They jumped onto the branch almost immediately after seeing Nox on her hands and knees, screaming in agony and clutching the side of her neck coated in 2 opposing types of energy. Sasuke reached out to ask Nox a question, but some of the energy lanced out. The purple energy shocked him with unfathomable pain, but the silver-white energy quickly calmed it, and he jerked back. He remarked, "It's torturing her." Ryu retorted, "No shit, Sherlock." No, because the silver energy is healing her while the dark energy is causing the pain. Sasuke exhaled in horror. She can't even use meditation techniques to ignore it. Bast. I'm really sorry, Nox gasped in agony. Fuck. What on earth took place? Naruto insisted on entering the scene. Oh no. Nox. Come out of nowhere, Megumi exclaimed. Where did the two of you come from, for heaven's sake? Sakura demanded, unused to teleportation. What the? She asked, taken aback by Megumi's air of censorship. Her energy went crazy for us. We're going to try and stabilize you, Naruto said, flinching as the energies struck him but were nearly neutralized by his own, forcing her to look up. Bastard must have interrupted it at the exact right moment somehow. You understand? Do it. Nox let out a shuddering sigh before collapsing into the pulp wood after carving a good foot into it. Naruto and Megumi gathered energies around Nox and pulled most of them away into themselves, forcing the darker energies to clash with the lighter ones. Nox screamed, barely able to keep her own teeth from breaking from how hard she was clenching her jaw. "Whatever became of you three?" Sasuke remarked. "You look like you fought the devil." Megumi hurried over to embrace him, shivering slightly. "What happened?" As he gave Megumi a gentle back rub, he glared at Naruto and demanded. "Someone who wasn't in our league attacked us. It's probably the traitor Sanin Orochimaru based on the snakes I encountered. For this kind of effect, he must have done something that messes with bloodlines." "That's impossible to predict," Naruto explained. "Megumi's not hurt, just shaken, and a cuddlebug," Naruto added, and Megumi gave a small sniff that might have been amused or distressed. After smiling at this, Sasuke turned back to face Nox. "So what happened?" "The balance must have been upset by something. Most people only hold one or perhaps two of the three parts of our bloodline. Megumi and Nox both have two, but I'm unique in that I have three. She is balanced by Megumi, but Nox." When he explained that she had been at war with herself all of her life, there was a lackluster nod that essentially said, "I don't understand what you're saying." "All right. This is how we should put it. There are three parts to our bloodline: Earth, Hell, and Heaven. Hell has illusions and is all about doing harm and, in essence, killing things quickly or slowly. Heaven is a place of self defense and healing, and it has great power over all forms of creation and elemental manipulation. Being a little bit of everything but not an expert in any of them, Earth is the middle ground. Heaven and Earth coexist harmoniously in Megumi." Naruto clarified. "Nox has Hell and Heaven, and they have been on the verge of fighting each other her entire life." Some people nodded when Megumi said, "She should be fine, but we need to get her to a bed and quickly." As Sasuke gave one to Megumi, Naruto sighed and smiled toothily, saying, "Yeah, but unless we walk in with a heaven scroll we're boned." "Hun. You're not that horrible. However, we must move," Naruto said. "Yesterday." Megumi nodded and kissed Sasuke quickly on the cheek before snatching one of Nox's arms and jumping away as Naruto lifted her up and carried her between them. Sasuke calmly said, "Well, come on, we still need an earth scroll." He then leapt away, his teammates following. The sand group Temari and Kankuro were worried, which was a fairly normal state of affairs given that they were the offspring of the most egotistical and, to be honest, foolish Kazekage in the village's history, if the position was passed down through bloodlines. Well, whatever the case, their biggest worry at the moment was their brother. As usual, their psychotic, tortured red-headed sibling was silent and moving slowly, with his head tilted to the side as if he was listening. Kankuro coughed, but inaudibly, and Gaara glared at him before turning back to the forest. He sighed and made the decision to bite the bullet and ask, but before he could. "Mother, I can't hear you. This whole invasion was a bad idea with that freaky kid with the monster-killing intent to that crazy exam lady. What do you know? She has been silent longer than ever before," Gaara said before turning to face them and his gourd uncorking Kankuro, who backed off in terror. As the sand started to pour out, he demanded. Nothing, she was not harmed by me." As Temari retreated, certain that her brother was going to die, Kankuro spoke hastily. "A liar. You're all the same, just like Dad, similar to Yashimaru. Plotting my death while posing as an ally." In an attempt to distract Gaara, Temari launched a massive wind attack, but when she saw that he was blown backwards with his sand barely holding back the blades as it moved much more slowly than before, he hit the ground head first and was out instantly. Her blood turned cold as she realized this, but nothing happened. Gaara shouted. Temari decided, and she made a desperate gamble to save what little family she had left. "What's happening?" Kankuro asked in shock as he got to his feet and watched in disbelief as Gaara simply rolled over in his slumber. Shukaku had an incident. Can he sleep now that he can't hear it? Kankuro nodded as Temari said, "You should put a blanket on him and figure out what the hell is going on. This must involve that blonde child." Temari shook her head in response to Kankuro's statement that he's too weird not to be involved in something this weird. Gaara, on the other hand, awoke late the following morning after being moved several times while he slept and smelling the aroma of a stew cooking. What took place? He asked himself, unsure of what was happening. At last. "You've slept for more than a day." Temari and Kankuro watched him warily but not completely in terror as Gaara rolled over and sat up, and Kankuro said, "Here, eat this." A bowl was set down nearby. "What's happening? Was I asleep?" He shook what felt like cobwebs out of his head and asked in a startled tone. "Somehow, yes. 2 green slashes have appeared on your cheeks, and the markings on your forehead have turned green. However, I'm not sure what they mean." Temari clarified, removing a neatly kept kunai to reveal Gaara's polished face. He took it, inspected himself, and then dropped the knife when he clenched it at the sight of his new facial adornments, which caused pain. Heart. Gaara said, panting, my blood. His sand began to move wildly all over his body, and he could feel the hot, sharp sensation reverberating from his fingers. Kankuro placed a small pot of salve in front of Gaara and explained, you can still control your sand but it won't control itself. Gaara nodded and then applied the salve sparingly, as it would dull the pain and stop the bleeding. I'm glad you're awake. As he walked in from around a nearby tree, Keiichi said, I guess you want to know exactly what happened. Blades were out in an instant, and sand was flying to him. A burst of energy was released just as quickly, and everything was thrown back. No need for that, he said, casually leaning comfortably against a tree. Did you harm me in this way? He smiled and nodded in response to Gaara's demand, and his sand immediately surrounded him, crushing down until hard sections of it turned to stone. He withdrew it to get the man's blood, but he was fine despite the insane pressure. Are you finished yet? Because if you are, then I can tell you what I did, he said, after Gaara attempted to crush him once more. A few minutes later, he began to retract it, but the obnoxious man was still in excellent health. Gaara gave him a growl and said, then speak. Well, to cut a long tale short, Shukaku is no longer there. After all the torture she endured inside of you, the poor girl was essentially pleading for death. Because of his crimes against immortals, that crazy monk whose name I never bothered to find out is utterly destroyed. It's no wonder demons are so inspired, he said calmly, because even though I was born human, I'm still astonished by the cruelty of people. In any case, you are the new Shukaku. You'll eventually remember her, but for now, you just need to know that you still possess all of your former abilities. However, you are in charge of everything. He clarified, receiving blank but wide-eyed stares. All right, then. In essence, Gaara is Shukaku's next incarnation. Keiichi started, and he was about to continue when he winced at the loud, what, from the sand team. So your mother is still with you and much closer than ever before. Please. What's happening? What's going on in this village, and who are you? Keiichi grinned and put a finger to his lips in response to Kankuro's disbelieving question. In summary, your invasion was doomed from the beginning. You have all been duped by Orochimaru, who killed and posed as the Hokage, but don't worry, I don't mean to harm you. He has been handled suitably. Orochimaru, the implications of what he had witnessed firsthand and through clones had him racing out of the forest, his mind racing. These children were not using jutsu, no chakra was being used, but the elements, the trees, and even the weapons were responding to them so easily that it had to be something more. He knew he needed to stand back and observe from a distance because he needed to know if there was more at stake, more to gain, more to. He couldn't finish that thought because he was struck so hard in the face that it felt like Tsunade and an unidentified twin had sucker punched him with electrically charged brass knuckles, sending him reeling backwards with pulped gums. Needless to say, he lost focus as he rolled in the grass, dislocating his jaws before launching up a perfectly healthy copy of himself. He looked around and saw that he was surrounded by a large group of extremely well-built warriors, including Sarutobi and several Anbu, all of them glaring at him. And who are you? They all had very different smells, just like the three kids, and he could taste that they were all related to the red-headed girl he had cursed. He asked, not sensing chakra from them. Mjonleer crackled with energy as Thor snarled, I'm the one whose hammer you will be well acquainted with. Magni and Modi each drew a vicious sword and glared at him. Attacking a member of our family is one thing. We are, of course, warriors. But to mark a weak member with that heinous mark. Our youngest child. A voice growled behind him, and he turned to see a stunningly beautiful woman with hair that appeared to have been literally spun from Golda. Yes, look up Sif. But he didn't have time to process this before a spear was thrust into his face. Do you really believe that I will be intimidated by such toys? Orochimaru of the Sannin is who I am. I'm not a chunin or junin from the rank and file. Even Kage is defeated by my power. Thor, who was clearly not impressed, slammed him with a kick to the calf after he boasted. Another blonde young woman, this one with red highlights, knelt into view as the earth itself grabbed onto Orochimaru, holding his head fast, and said, Nox has always been a pain, but she's been pulled in two directions with a favor on her mother. Orochimaru felt a curved blade rest on the back of his head. But even Nox has realized that family is family, Thrud stated perilously. Who are you people? Orochimaru inquired, and Sif chuckled quietly. We are the goal you have had for your entire life. Before Thor broke Orochimaru's back with a single swipe, Modi declared, we are gods. Orochimaru felt energy surge through the earth and realized that he was even more firmly bound after being healed. We're as angry as you can imagine right now, Snake. Thus, we'll present you with an option. Will you meet your just punishment or die in a valiant battle from which you are unable to flee? Magni inquired. I'll eat all of your maggots. Orochimaru screamed as his body changed and his skin sloughed away, revealing thousands of snakes. Each snake, including himself, was swiftly killed by the divine attack until the final one was stomped underfoot, barely escaping with its head crushed. Does the snake have any other tricks? With the hammer's handle extended until the sparking head was just a millimeter away from Orochimaru's left eye, Thor asked slowly. This isn't possible. The soft earth had turned to stone, and he was bleeding inside, but he wheezed, trying to think of something, anything that could save him in this situation. I have so much left to do. You allowed me to harm my child, who was my youngest at the time, and no, you have nothing else to do. You are powerless to do anything. The last prize for a monster like you is about to be given to you. Please give Mara and Lady Hilde my regards. They will personally wish to introduce you to the depths of hell, Thor remarked, lifting his hammer a half-foot before smashing the serpent. As he raised the weapon, the smell of burning meat caused electricity to spark all over it. He casually brushed the ashes off the hammer's head and said, "It's a 20-minute wait, father, or the mortals will be suspicious." Thor sighed, and Sif placed a consoling hand on her husband's back. Everything will be fine. Naruto and Megumi claim that she has survived the worst of it, with the only consequence being a significant loss of power. Sif leaned into him and his muscles started to relax as he said, "This scum is hurting her. Aside from Dad, you are aware of she's love for irony." Before snapping his neck, Modi remarked, "I imagine that the serpent is going through far more than his fragile mind can comprehend. Let's return to Team Immortal. Oh, beauty that has been sleeping awakens." As Nox entered the cafeteria and sagged in front of them with her head in her arms, Naruto observed, "Don't tell me you're going back to sleep now." Nox quickly grabbed a small bundle of pepper slices stuck together with cheese and downed it before gorging at a pace that only Erd could match with sake. Skulled with ice cream, Keiichi with caffeine, Naruto with ramen, or any other immortal with a food as an energy source. It's like I've been through a thresher. Back off. She snapped before removing a sealing scroll and injecting a little energy into it, resulting in a hot tray of habanero and spiced chicken nachos with a bottle of ale on the side. All right. Now you're in balance. What is the sensation? Megumi, wearing a sundress and enjoying the beam of light coming in through the window, asked courteously. It hasn't taken me long to notice. However, a feeling of relief prevails. For the few times when food wasn't running down her throat, Nox remarked, "It's like you've had a headache for so long that you forgot about it, and then it's gone." As Modi put a finger to his lips behind Nox and wiggled his eyebrows, indicating that he was up to something, Naruto fought back a smile and said, "Makes sense." Nox's entire immediate family, including her mother and stepmother, was right behind her. "How are you, Nox?" "Getting better." She took another bite, started choking on it, and reached around for the ale, only to discover that Magni had just finished swiping a swig and handed it to her. Modi asked, hammering her on the back as she gulped down the bitter beverage without even rubbing the top. "Avoid doing that." There was some laughter and her beating off numerous hands as she half-yelled. Naruto grinned and remarked, "You know, you guys have a lot of time together with 4 more days in this exam." "Have I missed a day?" Nox inquired. "Yes. It makes sense that when we all go to eat, that's when you wake up at last," Mara said wryly, drawing some laughter. After finishing his 3rd bowl, Naruto said, "Well, don't worry about it. After all, there are 4 more exam days left, and Nox is apparently in balance. You're all probably dying to know why she hasn't changed back yet." Naruto started, and Nox gave him a post-apocalyptic look before he sighed. "All right. The countdown is almost over because the potion was essentially frozen during that period." Nox wrote, "There shouldn't be more than an hour or 2 left at most, before Sif and Mara seized him." "Well, let's make the most of this moment. Erd is bringing us another potion. After all, we still need to get together for a girls' night," Mara joyfully declared. "Oh no, you don't." The chase continued as Nox yelled, kicked the metal leg of her chair, and disappeared into it. She reappeared at the opposite end of the dining hall, pointing at Mara, and let loose with a "ha" and a "oh shit." Sif, who also teleported with metal, grabbed onto her, but the grip broke, and Nox disappeared once more, Sif right behind her.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.